Let's see. Liberty Cave. Okay, that's one of your folks out there, Steve.
Yep, yep.
Okay, so I believe that we're feeding out to the people out there in the world. Welcome to Utreon. If you're watching this later or listening to this later and you're like, why are these guys on, what's this Utreon thing? That's so we can go live and that we could hold guns like that. So I'm not sure. I think temporarily offline said he doesn't have any shooters right now. So I will be showing off the shooters. And maybe later when we get Glen Tate on, he's supposed to be here, but he's.
I just have the radios.
The radio. Okay, there you go. That's dangerous enough, according to the certain people out there in the world.
This one's bright yellow. It's gonna take down the world.
Yeah, dangerous man, dangerous man. So yeah, if you want to join us live, Utreon is the place to go. I'm on Utreon. Oh well, the podcast is on Utreon as Who Moved My Freedom. Of course, also Hank Strange is on there. Is temporarily offline on Utreon yet? Are we working on it?
So I clicked the button today and I clicked the import channel link. So, yes.
Oh, you're on your way. You're on your way. So that being, yes, absolutely. Okay, that being said, let's see. Let's start the show here. Let's get going, and hopefully we get Glen somewhere here. Lola's working on that, so bear with us.
Welcome back to the Hank Strange Situation. Lifestyles of the Locked and Loaded.
We wouldn't be able to keep the Who Moved My Freedom podcast going without the support of great companies like Franklin Armory. Franklin Armory provides 100% US-made firearms and awesome binary option triggers. Their focus and purpose is to provide freedom tools to all Americans, especially those in not-so-free states. So when you're in the market, please consider Franklin Armory. All right, so here we go. We are live. Okay, so guess what? Steve, I know you're new at this. There's this thing that we do here. It's called Jazz Hands. It's a tradition. We've been doing it for years. Everyone has to do it. There you go. There you go. There goes the Jazz Hands. We're taking it back from the terrorists. We are live. I hope you guys have your big girl panties on. This is episode 890. 890. So we've got 10 more to 900 and 110 more to 1,000 episodes. And then the Joe Rogan type money starts rolling in around it now.
Is that when it happens? I got a long way to go.
Well, that's what Joe Rogan said. I don't know. And other people say that, but I doubt it. I haven't even seen like a trickle of that yet. However, we're getting there. We're getting close. My guest tonight, author Glen Tate. He should be here. Lawyer, author. He writes these novels about being prepared. I think the series is 299 Days. I started listening to that. We should see him here in a while. Until he gets here, we've got my friend Steve of Temporarily Offline on the YouTubes. I'm looking here
That's
to
right.
see what's your KM9G. That's your call sign? Oh,
that's my
you know
call
what?
sign.
It's on your. Look at that. You got that on your.
I was prepared.
Would you
It's
look
a
at
prepping
that?
show. I was prepared. Shocker.
Yeah, so I met Steve at Hamcation along with a bunch of other ham radio dudes. I saw you were throwing up this is my first ham radio right there. ID 52. Is that what is that?
This is a BTEC 6x2. Baofeng Tech, not Baofeng. This is the Baofeng, the UV5 Army model.
Yeah. Oh, the dudes out there have got Baofangs, or what is it? Baofeng? Is that how we're supposed to say it? Baofeng?
So, I say Baofeng. You can say Bofang. You can say Pofeng. You can say Baofeng.
Goodness gracious. Okay.
I just call it a Fang. I'm a member of the Fang Army.
Right. Okay. All right. Yes, that's one of those things we'll get into, the pronunciation.
Then
Go ahead.
I've got big boy radios too.
Yeah. Oh, listen. Those things are being used over in the Ukraine. The Russians are using them. The Ukrainians are using them. So it's legit, right? It's in a war. Can't get more legit than that. Are the ham radio snobs still gonna keep talking bad about people that get those?
Oh, always. That's one of the things that happens when you get your license. You get a whole list of things that are now grievances that you get to take up and be a member of.
Right.
It used to be like, get off my lawn. Now it's like, quit using those Chinese radios. So.
Yeah, I got a lot of that at that show actually when Lola and I got Yeah, so I mean, I think everyone out there in the audience knows the story. However, we went to Hamcation. We met actually Jason, Ham Radio 2.0, and then there's a lot of Jasons in the ham radio world.
Jason KM4ACK, yep.
Yeah.
Jason W5IPA, they're all over the place.
Yeah, there's
just
Jason.
lousy with them.
Yeah, I don't know what the Gigaparts Jason is, but I met those two at...
I don't know his call sign.
Yeah, I'm not sure what it is either, but I met those two at the Overlanding East in Virginia last year, and then they invited us to Hamcation. We studied, we went there, we got our technician's license, myself and Lola, met you. We met Ham Radio Dude.
Yep.
Right? Evil guy named Sean, as all
Yep.
people named Sean are. I don't know if he's watching this or not, but, you know, this is a known fact. You know, cats are evil, dude's named Sean, evil. There you go. Prove me wrong. That's my challenge to the world. Prove me wrong.
So I actually, he's neither confirm nor deny.
He's actually a pretty good dude. He's funny.
I only know about how awesome Steve's are. Steve Rogers, Steve Austin, Steve Trevor, Steve McQueen.
Wow, you got a list of Steves.
Yes. He made a movie about it, the Tao of Steve.
Oh, okay. Yes. Okay. Go ahead. Do you have more?
Oh, well, no, that was a big part of that list.
Yeah,
$6 Million Man. Steve, I forget what his name was.
Isn't there a movie with All About Steve or something like that?
The Tao of Steve. Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
No.
So Lola's prompting me to tell people about myself and my channel.
Yes, Lola is always trying to boss me around. Okay.
So we're not going to let her have it.
Well, okay, I guess I got no choice.
Yeah. So I do. I've got a couple of different things that are going on in my world. I am a member of a crew of hams. We do a Saturday and Sunday morning zoo show on YouTube called Coffee and Ham Radios. So we just talk about whatever that's ham radio adjacent. Sometimes it's not even ham radio. We did some overlanding and some more GMRS type stuff. And I do hacking. This is actually the Zygu X6100. This is a radio that you know is tactical because it's got paracord on it, but it's running a Linux operating system, and I've been able to root the operating system on it and load my own custom software on it. And then I do a lot of retro tech stuff just because, you know, I'm an older guy and I used to play with this stuff when I was younger and poor, and now I'm older and have a little bit more disposable income, and so I play with some Commodore 64s and some older computers, and I've actually built them from, you know, complete bare circuit boards all the way up. I do some repair work, and I just have a lot of fun with technology.
So what made you, how long ago was it that you got into ham radio, and why?
So I grew up, and I'm a firearms instructor also. I grew up in the Washington, D.C. metro area, and one of the stories that I tell is there's this thing that says recognize, don't walk into an event already in progress. And I worked in Chinatown, and I got hungry after work, and I wanted to go get something to eat, and Chipotle's right across the street. So if you're not familiar with Chinatown, there's the big arch. It's a tourist trap where people take photos and stuff like that. There's one of the two busiest metro stations in the Washington, D.C. area, the Chinatown metro station. There is the, I think it's called the Verizon Center now, where the Washington Capitals, which used to be called the Washington Bullets, play, and they do a bunch of concerts. Like Justin Bieber has been there. I know you guys are all big Justin Bieber fans.
Sure, and, we're believers.
Yeah,
there's a couple of believers out there. Yeah.
So it's a big noisy area. There's always a police presence. There's always protesters on the corner. There's always tourists taking pictures. There's always stuff. And I tried to go into Chipotle, and the police wouldn't let me in, and I had no clue why they wouldn't let me in. And it turned out that Chipotle had just been robbed, and over the natural background radiation of the area, I couldn't tell that the restaurant across the street from where I worked and spent, 8 or 9 hours a day next to the metro station that I go into every single day and come out of every single day had just been robbed. I'm like, this is like my situational awareness level had gotten to like near zero because of just the constant din of chaos and mayhem that happened. So I'm like, I'm getting out of there. I moved up to a place in Wisconsin. It's a town called Luck. The population is less than 4 digits. I've got lots of acreage. I did a lot of farming and a lot of homesteading type stuff. And that's how I got into radio. Was I want to try and do all of these self-reliant, self-sufficient type things.
Mm-hmm.
And radio has been just a lot of fun. I didn't imagine I'd be talking to people in Australia and New Zealand and Japan with zero infrastructure, just all on stuff that I assembled in my backyard, or whatever the case may be. So
Right.
it's
And no
really
cell phone
interesting.
bill. Yeah.
Exactly.
You know,
I may or
kind
may
of,
not be paying more for radios at this point.
yeah, exactly. You know, I kind of got into this for the same reason. You know, it's why I got into firearms, and then obviously the advocacy that comes with that for the Second Amendment, right? Because that whole
Mhm.
idea of being prepared, being self-reliant. I grew up in New York City. You know, right now there's the story out there about this in my opinion, a terrorist who like set off some smoke bombs and then shot a bunch of people on the subways in New York City, where New York has got the most draconian anti-gun laws that I've ever seen. I think I'm going to say they're probably worse than what's in California. People can argue with me on that, but so no one was there able to defend themselves, and the guy basically had to turn himself in. You know, took the cops in New York City. They couldn't track him down, but he turned himself in, and that's how they found him. So yeah, all of that, like growing up like that, and you know, I always was into guns, but I really, first of all, in New York City, not able to legally really get into anything,
Right.
and so moved to Florida to get away from all of that stuff, become more self-reliant, got into guns, started doing YouTube stuff about it, and then part of that, you know, self-reliance is being able to communicate when things go down. You know, for example, Florida has hurricanes. You get a good hurricane here, you lose power for a couple of days, you won't have phones. That's just how it is. So that's how I've gotten into it, and I'm sure a lot of folks out there. I would like to know, for the folks out there, let us know if you are also in ham radio and what your call sign is. That's, you know, if you're out there in the chat, let us know.
Yeah, so when I lived in Maryland, they went crazy with their gun laws in Maryland too.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually had video of the Maryland state legislature doing a vote as to whether they were going to pass an anti-gun bill. And it went halfway around the room. Everybody was voting on it as it went around the room, and they were counting, and they realized that the vote wasn't going to pass. They paused the vote, took some people behind the scenes, whipped them into shape, brought them back out, and restarted the vote, which is technically against the rules of the legislature, but
Mm-hmm.
it's the legislature breaking the legislature's rules. Who's
So the
gonna,
bill
watch the
was going to
lawmakers?
pass or was not going to pass?
It was not going to pass.
Okay.
And then they said, remember that time I did that thing for you and you owe me for that? Well, you need to change your vote, And so, I mean, I don't know what words were said, but the person came back and changed his votes. And so we took it to, how you're taught in school that there's these checks and balances, and we have these three branches of government that are supposed to, maintain order and control. We took it over to the Maryland State Supreme Court and the judiciary branch and said, this happened, it's wrong, we need you to fix this. And they said, oh, it's a legislative problem, just take care of that yourselves. Okay. And then to make matters even worse, when it went through the legislator and passed, then it went to the Maryland State Police, and the Maryland State Police added their own set of laws to it. And I'm like, I am out of here, I'm just gone. This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
up in Wisconsin, you walk into the local Holiday gas station, and it's opening day of deer season, and everybody's dressed in camo and carrying rifles, and they're like, hey, did you get any today? And I'm like, yeah, I got 2 in the back of the truck,
Right,
and
yeah.
everybody's fine.
Yeah, Wisconsin's awesome. Florida was great when I moved here, man. Florida is getting there's some bad gun laws here in Florida we have to do stuff about, and we're having a tough time getting constitutional carry here. So Night Train says that the idea that the guy turned himself in is not true. That says he was eating at a local McDonald's over in East Village in Manhattan, and someone recognized him and called 911. Okay, I'm pretty sure I read before I came in, so that could be right. But I read before I came in here that the guy wound up turning himself in. He called the cops and told them where he was, and then when they came down there, he had left, but they saw him, but he gave up without a fight, really. So I don't know. Who knows? Lots of things coming out about this whole story right now. It's constantly developing, so I could have it wrong. Who knows what's going on with that? But just to make I think the big point I want to make about that is that people in New York City were not able to defend themselves. It's very difficult to get a concealed carry permit in New York City. My younger brother, actually a lot of my family lives in New York City, but my younger brother lives there, and he can only get permits to have the gun, but not to, like, he can't get a carry permit. You know, typically, you know, you have to call in favors, be really wealthy, and all that kind of stuff. And sometimes they have scandals that the cops, because it's not a shall issue state, so sometimes there's scandals that the NYPD, you know, is taking bribes and stuff like that to you know, give people that carry permit. So you've got lots of good people in New York, probably a lot of them that would be better trained than a lot of police officers there. I'm not, like, against police officers. I have members of my family, people I really care about, that are police officers, some of them in New York, but, you know, the training is not the best. There's not a lot of gun training there. There's not a lot of range time, except maybe for some tactical units and stuff like that. I do know some people who are in the tactical units, and they're definitely better. But typically, that guy right there on the scene, you know, is not going to be as trained as someone who's interested in guns and maybe been in that for a long time. And we should allow those people, you know, and other people for that matter, to be able to legally carry in New York City and be able to defend themselves. So, and Night Train says that NYPD corrupt and taking bribes, inconceivable. Yeah.
Well, this is a bribe that I could kind of get behind. You know, if it's a shell issue state and they'll take a bribe to turn that into a, I mean, if it's a may issue state and they'll take a bribe to turn it into a shell issue thing, then yeah, I'll take that.
Yeah, it depends on how much money you got to pay, right? Or does that? I don't know. Yeah, it's terrible. You know, it's terrible that exists. Like Florida, for example, you do your stuff you're supposed to do, and they got to issue that thing to you. So,
yep.
You know, how closely do you look at this? You know, like the Second Amendment stuff. I know you said you're an instructor. Do you follow that closely, or are you super busy with the ham radio stuff?
I used to be really into it, and then when I became a concealed carry instructor, I found a whole lot of like-minded individuals, and it stopped bugging me as much. Because, you know, you go out on the social media platforms and you start having these discussions with people, and you come from a place of education and concern and caring, and they come from a place of, you know, news media brainwashing. And at the end of the day, what I realized, and this is one of the reasons why I left Facebook, what I realized is that it's just two people who are very loudly talking in the direction of each other, but not actually making a connection, not actually having a communication with each other. And so instead of fighting that uphill battle with people who don't want to participate and don't want to learn the differences, or don't want to understand that people do have differences in opinions, you know, I kind of went into an area where people share the opinion. And as a result of leaving an anti-Second Amendment state next to a couple of other anti-Second Amendment states, and staying away from the news and staying out of the social media circles like that, my stress levels have gone way down. And it's good to know that there are people out there like us who are going to be those sheepdogs, as they call them.
Absolutely, yeah. You know, even in our side of things, and I'm talking about in the Second Amendment community, the folks who look at this stuff a lot of us have tuned out as well from most of the news. We're human beings. We follow the news to an extent, but it's really, really crazy, you know. And I think that there was a time in America where, I'm not going to say that news was really fair and balanced ever. I don't know if it ever was, but it's getting worse and worse in America, you know. And
I feel like they used to have an agenda, and when they pushed their agenda, they really searched for facts to back themselves up, and now they just push the agenda, and who cares about whether there's facts there?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's the really crazy thing here. So let me see. I'm trying to see if there's any questions or comments from the folks out here. It's easier to fool people than to convince them that they've been fooled. That's from 42 Chilled. So, good point. I can't argue that.
I know. I'm just sitting here in agreement. Yep.
Yes, absolutely. And then the funny thing I will say before I move on from that is, I've noticed that a lot of the people in the ham radio world are also two things. One, preppers. Two, They believe in the Second Amendment. Lots of gun guys out there. Yeah. I don't think I've come across one dude yet in the... I'm sure it exists. I'm sure there's quite a few dudes, but I haven't come across one guy that's like, I hate guns. Right? What about you? You're deep in it. You haven't come across any either, probably.
No, I haven't really run across anybody that's like that. I have friends that are ham radio operators, are gun-carrying Democrats, which is like, that's a trifecta.
My brother I was talking about in New York City, he's a Democrat.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with Democrats.
No, absolutely nothing. He's liberal, everything, but he believes in guns. And there's nothing wrong. I don't think guns should be a political issue.
No, it's just a hunk of metal or plastic or whatever the case may be. It's just the gun doesn't do anything. As we always say, it's not, the guns don't kill people. People kill people. It's the intent. It's the person behind the trigger. And if you, as you've seen in other locations, if you take guns away, they find another way to get done the thing that they were already going to do. Absolutely,
yes. And things in the Constitution like freedom of speech, Second Amendment. We can go on and on. That should not be political.
Right.
These just should be facts, and politicians, regardless of what side they're on, should not contest those, or they should be realities. Let's put it that way, right?
Right.
They should be realities, and they shouldn't contest it. But man, that's some kind of fantasy world that we're imagining.
Well, I think they're missing out. I think they're missing out on some of the principles that were laid out. If you say that no one should have any right to bear arms, as an example, what you're left with is, we now have to require everybody to be protected somehow, because no one can protect themselves. That's not going to happen.
The police state, they're going to do that with guns.
Yeah.
Weirdly enough, and
if you let everybody have guns, then they have the ability to make the decision to protect themselves or not.
Yeah, we'll be right.
Walther Arms has been making concealed carry handguns for over 90 years, starting with the PPK. Today, Walther is based in the good old US of A and still builds quality firearms like the PPQ and PDP for personal defense and competition. So when you're in the market, please consider Walther Arms. We wouldn't be able to keep the Who Moved My Freedom podcast going without the support of great companies like Walther Arms.
Yes. Okay, so... yeah, that was totally my bad. I should have given you a minute warning there. You came down, so you got it. I think you ended right before that. So
yeah. And 42 Chilled gets it in the chat here. He says guns make people more equal, and that is true.
Yes, that is true. Night Train says, except gun owners who vote Democrat are voting for politicians that want to take away their rights to own their guns is pretty pathetic. I think, I don't know how much you want to get into politics. I know as a rule, the ham radio guys kind of like stay out of politics. Well, definitely.
Not supposed to.
Yeah, definitely when you're on the air, right? When you're on the air, you guys kind of stay out of that. And even because I look at a lot of your, videos and a lot of ham radio stuff now, because I'm kind of like, I don't want to say burnt out on the gun world, but for lots of different reasons, I don't look at the gun stuff as much, right? When I make gun videos, I don't want to be influenced, if I'm going to make a video on that specific thing and all of that kind of stuff. So I'm looking at a lot of what you guys are doing, and I see that you guys don't get into it too much, but I think in lots of ways we're on the same wavelength, I mean the pun there, we're on the same wavelength. So it is. I
get it.
It is kind of crazy. I think the one thing I would say to Night Train on that is that I think in America, when it comes to politicians on both sides, right? We talk about this all the time here on the podcast. On both sides, people are supporting politicians that are taking away their basic rights all the time, not just when it comes to the Second Amendment, in lots of different ways. The politicians are supposed to be there to protect our rights, especially the stuff in the Constitution. And we're constantly supporting these guys that are trying to come up with ways to put us in prison, make us felons, all kinds of craziness. This is this is the very thing that politicians were meant to fight. And there was a time in America when, whether you want to look at liberals, Democrats, conservatives, or Republicans, that they fought against these things. Now they act like
You know, what's that you're talking about? Rights.
Right. And if you want to understand more about where the actual thought process comes from for these things, the founding fathers did write their own documents explaining in more detail what they meant.
Yep.
The Federalist Papers.
Yeah. A lot of this stuff is common sense too, man. It's just like, come on.
Yeah.
You know, it's what makes it. So I am an immigrant to America. You know, I was born outside of America, and I'm happy to be here and all that kind of stuff. It's what, to me, sets America apart from lots of places around the world. These particular rights that people in other places don't have. I mean, you know, folks take it for granted. There's countries around the world where and countries you would not expect. I used to live in England for some time, and you don't have actually the right to free speech in England.
That's
right?
Crazy.
Yeah. You don't have it. Go ahead.
They police your speech. They basically, there's somebody sitting in the coffee shop listening in, or I mean, how does that work?
I mean, people have gotten in trouble there for what they say, like serious trouble for what they say. And then also for folks like us from America trying to go there, if they don't like what you say, they won't let you in. You can't even go into the country.
Right, that's crazy.
You know. And then if you look at Canada even, man, right next door, I've been looking at what Canada has done recently to the truckers, right? You know, the whole thing going on with the truckers. They started seizing, or shutting down bank accounts of people who were supporting the truckers. And now there's a thing in Canada where the news media has to be registered with the government in order to put out news. Like, wait, this is Canada. And you know who's still the Queen of Canada?
Yeah, Elizabeth.
The Queen of England, yeah, is still the Queen.
Yep.
So it's weird. It's weird that kind of stuff is happening.
Still on their money.
Yeah. So America, awesome place to be. You know, regardless of what you want to believe in. The truth is, though, you want to think about what you're doing, because if you mess it up, I mean, you know, one day we'll all be trying to what's that? I forgot the movie. There's a movie out there. It's one of these movies. It's an apocalypse movie, but everything gets frozen over. Like the whole planet gets frozen over, and people from America are trying to run across the border to Mexico. Someone out there will tell me that.
The Day After Tomorrow or
I
something
think,
like that?
I think it was The Day After Tomorrow. Yeah.
Yeah, we basically took all of Mexico's debt to the U.S. and wiped the slate clean so that we could all go down there because of some global warming problem or something. Like Mexico's still warm, and we're able to sustain human life, whereas New York is buried under 3 miles of ice again.
Yeah. End of days.
Yeah.
End of days situation. So, yeah. Okay, so listen, what's going on? We're in the news section. We kind of have loose sections of the podcast here, which we don't have to stick to, but we're in the news section. Is there anything going on in the ham radio world that strikes your fancy, or even in, let's say, the gun world?
Yeah, so I mean, in the ham radio world, we're back to politics, but in the ham radio world, they're going to start charging a fee to get your license now. It starts April 19th, I believe, so it's only a couple of days away where you're going to have to pay. It's $35 for a 10-year license, and people are up in arms about that, and then people are like, what's the point? It's less than a penny a day. And I think from a political standpoint, it's one of those things where the fee doesn't go back to pay for anything ham radio related. Your ham radio license fee goes into the general fund. The system that the government has in place to track and maintain and update and modify and all that stuff, your licensing, is actually the same system that they use for commercial broadcast and for GMRS and for all of the other things. So it's already been paid for and designed and developed, and the staff is already in place and all that
FCC,
so
right?
Yeah, this fee is just going nowhere. And to me, it's another overreach. It's another place where fingers are getting into my pocket that don't belong in my pocket, that don't give me a benefit that I can put any tangible anything onto. So I don't like it. At the end of the day, it's $35, and my hobby of playing with radios is more important to me than pennies a day. $35 for 10 years, $3.50 a year. But it just makes me mad.
Lola just said that $35 for 10 years is pretty cheap on the scale of license fees. For sure, Lola.
It is.
However, However, it's just like having to pay fees in order to get a concealed carry permit. What kind of sense does that make?
Yeah.
What about the Second Amendment? There was
like
nothing
part of me with concealed carry permits,
Yeah.
I want to get one from every state. I want to collect them all. And the other part of me is like, why do I need this again? Don't I have my right to keep and bear arms, which shall not be infringed? I don't know.
That's a barrier. Every time the government puts barriers in place of things, you're stopping people from getting involved. And from the outside looking in, like I've just gotten into ham radio, it seems to me like the government is trying to discourage people from being ham radio operators because maybe the frequencies, they want to give this to the big companies that are giving them. I mean, some of these frequencies are worth billions of dollars, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, or tell me what you think about that.
So you're not wrong, but I don't know. Can I say this on your show? You're not right either.
Okay, no, that's totally fine. I'm often wrong.
The frequencies that we have, I'm just giving you a hard time. The frequencies that we have are really not great frequencies to begin with. I mean, yeah, we can use them. We can do a lot of amazing things because we put our ingenuity to play to make these things happen. But the frequencies that you get on your cell phone, like your cell phone's a nice crystal clear conversation, and sometimes it sounds like the person's in the next room right there with you, and you can send, you can watch movies on your cell phone while you're
this is going over a cell phone right now.
Passenger seat of the car.
Yeah, things like
this, that.
This right now is going over a cell phone.
Yeah,
we're broadcasting.
I'm
over a cell
doing
phone.
Wi-Fi, 2.4 gigahertz. 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi in your house is also a ham band, and if you are a ham radio license holder, you can transmit with higher power than your typical Wi-Fi router and get better distances out of your home Wi-Fi network than you can. But you can't go to Amazon and buy something because that's breaking the rules again. So I don't think so. There's this thing called Occam's razor. I don't think that they're trying to find some way to prevent these bands from being stolen. 7 million ham radio operators times $35 is not the times $3.50 a year is not the same amount of money that they're going to get from Verizon if they sell that portion of the spectrum off. I think it's just a situation where they want money, we have it, and here's another way they can take it from us. I don't think it has anything to do with I don't think they thought that far ahead. I don't think they're that deep. I could be wrong.
Okay.
I'd be willing
so
to be
tell me
wrong
about
on
the part where I was right.
way.
Where's the part? Tell me about the parts where I was right. You said
I think I was just being polite.
Oh.
No. Yeah, I mean, so there is the potential where these frequencies could be used for other things, and we do share some portions of the spectrum with other things. So, like your garage door opener and your car key fob remote works on 433 megahertz, which is part of the 70 centimeter ham band. Like I mentioned before, the 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi is overlapping with the ham band. The 60 meter ham band is we're secondary users on that frequency, 5 megahertz. And
that brings up a question for me. Can I use my ham radio as like my gate opener or something? Is that possible?
It is possible, and I think that you could do it, and I don't understand. Off the top of my head, I mean, you're kind of catching me off guard without doing a lot of research, but off the top of my head, I don't see any reason why.
I want to see a video on this, Steve.
Illegal.
Yeah. I want to see a video on this,
There is
Steve.
a guy that uses one of those RTL SDR dongles and does a replay attack on garage door openers, and the other one that people do is remote car starters or the door locks, unlocking somebody's door. Okay. So it's encoded, it's not encrypted, so you could do it. It's on a frequency that you're licensed to do it on. It's using a power level that you're allowed to use. I'm not your lawyer, but I think it's definitely
None
possible.
of us are lawyers. We are not giving legal advice or counsel.
I'm not a lawyer. I'm certainly not your lawyer. That's what I say in class all the time. I teach a law class, but I'm not a lawyer.
Oh, okay. How would you even go about that? Let's say, I'm just thinking because the other day I actually forgot my my gate opener. Right, I forgot it. So. And I was like, I had my radio with me, but I forgot the gate opener.
You'd have to plan ahead. You'd have to know the signal that's being sent.
Right.
And then you just have to replay that. So if you were to take your radio has the ability to record what it hears over the air to the SD card that's inside of the radio. It's a pretty advanced radio you got there. If you take your fob for your gate and you take your radio and you push the button while you're listening on the exact frequency and recording what's going on, you can then go into your radio and play that back and transmit it over the air on the right frequency, again, as long as you're within your license privileges. So
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
and I think it's 433 megahertz, and I'm pretty sure that's inside the 70 centimeter ham band.
Oh. Okay. Okay. Yeah. I have a whole bunch of questions like this that I want to ask. I can be really annoying with the what ifs.
No, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
So the other part about it is you might have all of the right equipment, but you might be violating a specific part. So we operate under FCC Part 97 as an example, and you might be doing something that's perfectly legal with equipment that's not legal to do it with. So like if I take my Baofeng radio that everybody complains about being unlocked and able to transmit all over the place, and I do transmit in FRS frequencies, I can't do it because this radio is not type accepted for that. It has a detachable antenna that I've removed, and it has a keypad on the front, and those are big no-nos for FRS radios. The fact that it can do it, and it can do it at legal power, and you have a ham radio license, and it's somewhere near a ham radio adjacent frequency, and it's fully capable of blah 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 blah, doesn't make it legally allowed to do it. It's that same thing where if you have all the parts to make a fully automatic firearm sitting in your garage disassembled, you have this crime that you've committed of being able to constructively create something that you don't have the tax stamp for. Yeah.
I'm only laughing because when in the middle of the whole COVID thing, there's a guy who calls me and he says he's like I don't know if this is true or not, but he says he's a friend of my barber. And he goes, yeah, I'm just calling you because I bought an AR-15 and I'm trying to figure out how to make it go full auto.
Yeah, it's doable. It might not be legal until you get all the right licenses and tax stamps and so on and so on. And by the time you pay for all of that, you might as well just buy a regular one off of a licensed gun dealer.
Yeah, that's what I told him. And I am an FFL actually, but I was like, it was so crazy. First of all, I thought, this guy's an op. Either I'm talking to ATF, FBI, who knows who I'm talking
to.
It's
a sting.
Yeah, exactly. But then
I
said, okay, so after I told him that, unless he had all these licenses and hoops that he jumped through, it's not legal. So I said, why do you want to do that? He's like, because I want to make it more accurate.
That makes it, no, not happening.
It's the opposite. It comes out of that.
Your targets don't have this nice grouping like this. They have this line.
Basically
drawing stripes on the paper.
Zips right up. So I was like, you want to make it more accurate? I was like, so what do you have on there right now for optics? And he's like, what are you talking about, optics? And I said, so I said, do you have iron sights? He's like, I don't know, what does that mean? And I was like, okay, so that's actual metal or physical sights. Do you have those on there, like metal, plastic, they pop up or they're standing up? Or nope. I was like, okay, do you have some kind of, do you have like a scope? He's like, no, I don't have anything on there. I was like, okay, this is where you start. Put some iron sights on that thing.
Let's go to the range. I'll bring one of my fully automatic firearms with me, and you can show me how much more accurate it is.
Yeah, he could have totally been like a real person. I see someone says AFT right there, but he could have been a real person and just genuinely didn't know, because when we had all those riots and everything that happened right before the COVID thing got hot, and then and then we had COVID and all that going on, and there were lots of people who thought, I could just walk into a gun store and give them money and walk out. I don't have to do background checks, nothing.
That doesn't work that way.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that. Now, that being said, there's a couple of questions that came up when you were answering me there that I wanted to get into. One, and I don't know how much time we have. One, I wanted to get into the Mars mod.
Yep.
Okay, so maybe we should start with the Mars mod. Can you explain that to folks out there? What is the Mars mod?
Yeah, so again, we're back into that type accepted thing. If you have an off-the-shelf ham radio that you bought, as an example, this Zygu 6100 here, it is going to only be able to, according to FCC rules, it's only going to be able to transmit within frequencies that your license allows you to use. And then there's something you can do called a Mars mod. I want to say Mars stands for Military Auxiliary Radio Service or something along those lines. And that is legal, but that's not ham radio. and you have to go through a different set of licensing criteria in order to get the Mars mod and the ability to do Mars radio service work. But most of your radios do have the ability, most of your off-the-shelf commercial radios have the ability to be modified so that they can transmit anywhere. So like this radio here, for example, it's a one-line code change in a text file on the internal memory card
to Mars
to
mod.
make this thing to Mars mod it. Yep.
So my question is, well, okay, so do you have to get a license to do the Mars mod, or can you, if you have a technician's license or any kind of amateur license, general, whatever, can you listen? Or even if you don't, can you get a Mars mod and just listen to stuff?
So without a Mars license, without a Mars certificate, whatever it is that you're required to get, I don't have that thing, so I don't know the technical term for it. You can listen to anything, anywhere, anytime. You're actually not allowed to be restricted from listening to things.
Okay.
By current laws, you know how that works.
Yeah.
But you can't transmit. So if I wanted to follow all of the rules properly, my wife does not have her ham license. You're lucky that yours does. I have a GMRS radio, so if we're out back in the RV into a campsite, I can hand her a GMRS radio. It's a shared license for the whole family. She can communicate on that. I can communicate on that. Nothing illegal about that. If I then wanted to talk to my ham radio friend on 2 meters, I would have to switch radios. I'd have to put the GMRS radio down, pick up the 2 meter radio, and start talking on the 2 meter radio, using my ham license and my ham call sign, which are 2 different call signs. And then if I wanted to do CB radio, I'd have to pick up my CB radio and communicate on that using, CB frequencies. Now with a Mars modded radio, I'd be able to talk on all of those frequencies on one radio. I'd technically be breaking a bunch of different rules to do it, but I don't have to carry 4 radios with me now.
Yeah, to actually talk. And so that's the reason why I asked you, because I actually got mine Mars modded. So now I'm just listening. That's why people can get a Bofang out there and they can just listen as well. But I do have access to those GMRS. Now there's a GMRS license which I have not done, because I think that's getting cheaper when the other license goes up.
That goes from 70 down to 35.
Yeah, so I'm waiting for that. None of that makes sense either. So we're gonna take a quick break here, and we're gonna come back and continue this. Let me know if you guys have questions.
We wouldn't be able to keep the Who Moved My Freedom podcast going without the support of great companies like High Point Firearms and Full Forge Gear, bags and gear for everyday life. Did you know High Point is an American family-owned and operated company located in Ohio with over 30 years of manufacturing experience? High Point is proud to be the home of the working man's gun and your source for affordable handguns and carbines with a lifetime warranty. So when you're in the market, please consider High Point.
Now, I should say that someone actually gave me this book. What is this? Heil Ham Radio Handbook, 2nd edition, Bob Heil, K9 EID.
Bob's awesome.
Oh, do you know? You know Bob? Okay.
So Bob Heil is the guy that makes all the high-end microphone equipment for all of your famous rock stars, rock musicians.
Okay. Yeah, it seems like a really cool book. So now, to get back to real quick, unless you had something else you wanted to add there, with the Mars mod, so there's a whole bunch of things that open up there. Have you ever spent any kind of time looking into what all opens up when you do that Mars mod? Obviously the military stuff, unless you are licensed with them, because I think that's a whole other call sign, right?
I'm not sure if there's a call sign that's there. I think it. I'm not going to say anything because I don't know enough to speak intelligently about it. But it's not your ham radio license. There is something different that you're required to have. Everything I know is just hearsay because I don't have it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the only thing that I've recognized is that they are GMRS, and for the reason that you said, I thought, okay, this would be cool, because if I'm doing, like, I have vans, I do overlanding and stuff like that. If I'm doing a caravan thing with a bunch of people, and everyone else has those GMRS, I can just, I don't have to go get a whole separate radio. So that's the big reason I did it.
So you're rocking that ICOM ID52A. That's a fantastic radio. You've done the Mars mod on it. The ID52A is a 2 meter, 70 centimeter radio.
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting real technical on purpose here.
Mm-hmm.
In the 70 centimeter band, it's 400 to 4. I'm going to get real close to the numbers because I don't have it memorized. It's 430 to 450 megahertz or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And GMRS is 465 megahertz. So you technically have a piece of equipment that can do GMRS.
Mm-hmm.
You do that Mars mod, and now, like you said, you're carrying one radio that can do two things,
Mm-hmm.
and you've now opened up your capabilities where before you'd have to carry two different radios.
Yeah. So actually what happened is I went to Ham Radio Day at Gigaparts in Huntsville, Alabama, and Lola has a Yaesu, had that Mars modded. Mm-hmm. So once we do that, because if you get the GMRS license, there's no tests for folks out there who are interested in it. But if you get that
test is, can you remember your credit card number? Yeah.
Right, exactly. You got to pay. But I didn't want to pay the $70 because I'm cheap like that.
Next week.
Yeah, I'm just waiting. As soon as next week comes, they are getting that $35 from me.
It'd be a land rush.
We just pay one time, and then it would go to me, Lola, my kids. We would all be able to use it. So Lola's radio is also Mars modded, and then I got an ID 5100A.
Nice.
To have in my van. That also I got that Mars modded at the same time.
Nice.
So.
Nice.
But I just like the idea, like Mars. I was like, oh, Mars mod, what? So that sounds sexy.
Yeah, this is one of the things I've got to do on this radio here. Mm-hmm. This is the ICOM 705, and I want to modify this one here.
That looks good.
This is the granddaddy right near. Is that
in a cage of some sort?
Yeah, this is in the WinCamp ARC 705 cage, so it's full metal protection around the whole.
That's
outside
really cool.
Of the radio.
Yes, yeah, I like that. Yeah.
And then the reason why this radio is as good as it is because it does all HF and it also does 2 meter 70 centimeters. So what you've got going on is you've got your ID52. Mm-hmm. This isn't it, and then you also have your HF radio. Mm-hmm. And so that's your setup that you've got going on there. And with the 705, I've got the capability of both of those radios in one box with lower power. So it's a 10 watt radio versus like maybe a 100 watt radio or something along those lines. So
yeah, I've been doing a lot of things since we met back in when was
February?
Was it February? Okay.
Yeah, it's a while ago.
I've been getting up to a lot of crazy stuff, man. I put a GP9, a Comet GP9 on my house. Hold on, I'm going to show that off here for a second. Look at that antenna. Look at that thing.
A little crooked, Hank. A little crooked.
Well, sometimes that's because that happens when the flow is not right. Sometimes you lean to the left or to the there's some medications for that that's out there.
If your antenna doesn't stay up for 4 hours.
Yeah. Okay. Listen, I don't know. Do you see how this thing is attached on here? It's impossible. Is that a violation?
Yeah. No, it's fine. I'm just giving you a hard time because I can.
No, that's cool. That is actually really cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm impressed by having that big antenna and.
You should be getting lots of range out of that too. You're probably talking 100 miles or more with that thing on good days, good conditions.
Yeah, I don't know if I've had good enough conditions to do that, but I know that. So my handheld in Florida, there's something called SARNet that goes all up and down Florida. It goes from the top of Florida all the way down to the Keys, and outside of the house I can hear it where I'm in the country. I can hear it a little bit. It's not always perfect, but with that antenna I can hear it. And on Wednesdays, for example, at 1 p.m. Eastern, there's a check-in, and you could hear them checking in all up and down that repeater system because it's kind of set up for hurricanes and things like that. So I like listening to that and listening to the ham radio dudes talking on there. It amuses me, cracks me up, and I've spoken on there a couple of times. What do you guys call it? Make contact?
Make contacts, make QSOs. Yep, make connections.
Yeah. So I've done that.
What radio are you using with that Comet antenna?
I am actually using the ID 5100A.
Okay, and that 5100, I want to say, is a 50 watt radio. You should be able to get some pretty good distance out of that. So if you go into repeaterbook.com, you should be able to find repeaters in your area and then expand that radius out to 50, 60, 70 miles and just give them a shot.
Yeah, yes, I have done that. So, but I haven't like connected to any of those repeaters and then gone out to other places yet. So
Right.
that is something that I'm working on that I think is really cool. Because then you can get sometimes you can get on a repeater that's connected to a reflector. This is gonna get crazy, and I'm probably gonna say everything wrong, but the reflector is like a repeater, but it works on the internet. Then you could talk to people anywhere in the world.
Yeah, yeah. So you've got a radio that's got what's called B-Star in it,
Mm-hmm.
and then Lola's radio has something called Fusion or C4 FM in it. And with both of those two radios, you can connect to a hotspot, tunnel through the internet, and come out somewhere on the
Mm-hmm.
other side of the world. I was
Mm-hmm.
actually using my Baofeng cheap radio and what's called an All-Star node,
Mm-hmm.
and that will tunnel through the internet. And I was talking to my friend Hayden in Australia. So I'm doing 2 meters to my All-Star node. My All-Star node's tunneling through the internet. It's hitting a repeater in his area, which is on 6 meters, a totally different band, a totally different kind
Mm-hmm.
of radio, which he's then picking up in his car while he's driving. So I'm sitting in my house in
In
Wisconsin talking to
In
a dude,
Australia.
in a car driving down the road in Australia.
That's fun. I like the idea of that.
Yeah.
How was the signal on that? How did it sound?
It was just as good as any other 2 meter signal that you're getting, because
Mm-hmm.
we're all on the higher frequencies, and it's all FM, so it all sounds,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like almost always there, or not at all there,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
as opposed to HF where you can get a little bit of fading.
this is the cool nerdy stuff that I think is because there's a lot of people like, oh, we got cell phones. I got my phone. I don't need that. Well,
Yeah, and you got a nice bill too,
yeah, your phone's
and you're not in
expensive.
control.
The bill is expensive. When you do all of this, I mean, that antenna costs money. The radios cost money, but then you're not paying to talk to people after that. So, and it's cool,
Right.
like you're doing it, you're figuring it out. It's a lot like gun stuff. If you really get into guns, you start building guns. You're like, oh wow, I could make this stuff. I could do
Yep.
this. So that's the cool thing about this. I'm gonna get into I want to get into the Bofang part of my question to you here. Armament and Axes was saying something about he has a friend that's way into to radio. He's a gun guy and a musician. I was telling you that I was looking at Ham Radio 2.0's YouTube, and he actually followed Armament and Axis. So Armament and Axis, do you
Nice.
know? You must know Ham Radio 2.0 or something, because he's following you. If you go to his YouTube, he's got you up there, as one of the people that he follows. So I was like, you guys must know each other. So somehow, Armament and Axis, he's a gun guy, but he's also a musician. So um, it's a small world. I've got to figure out. That's gonna stay in my brain until I figure out what is the connection of these people. So,
Overlapping circles, yeah.
yeah, it's really interesting. Okay, so Bofangs, because Lola said, wait, can we start with Bofangs? Most folks have that, and then work up to the next step from that.
Yeah,
So,
sure. Start anywhere that makes you happy. Any price point that gets you into the hobby is totally okay with me. I'm not going to ham shame anybody. If you get a Baofeng and you get on a repeater and it gets you excited, and then you want to know how to do that All-Star Link thing that I talked about, well,
mm-hmm,
all right, now we can do that. Well, what if I want to do it on a radio that isn't a Baofeng? Okay, well,
mm-hmm,
here's the kind of radio. Well, what kind of antenna do I need for that? Okay, well, here's the kind of it, and down the rabbit hole you go,
mm-hmm,
and I've got a setup where I can clamp something onto my truck and I can make radio contacts while I'm driving down the road. I've got something where I can throw a wire in a tree in a park and I can make contacts. I've got a station at the house. I can just put up a different antenna and run a program all day long. And at the end of the day, I can figure out, who all has heard me and who all I can hear
mm-hmm,
by just sending out what they call it, weak signal propagation reporter.
mm-hmm.
You can do tactical communications with a Baofeng. Like I can send text messages to and from radios, or I can send text messages from a radio to a cell phone. The person on the cell phone can reply back without a license,
Mm-hmm.
and it will come over to ham radio because it'll go to somebody who has a license, and then it'll be repeated out. I can get a
Okay.
local weather report by sending, like I think you just send WX local or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
and it'll come back. It'll figure out where you are based on your GPS location and come back and tell you what the weather is in your area. So if you're
Mm-hmm.
out camping and don't really know what the zip code is, or don't know, um, the name of the town that you're in, you can still get the weather, or you can just tune it to the weather frequency and listen to the weather. But cool things like that. You can decode images from the International Space Station with a Baofeng and a cell phone. You can send pictures back and forth with a Baofeng. There's just lots and lots of things that you can do. People make repeaters out of these things, and it's all. I mean, it's a $25 radio, so you're getting $25 worth of quality out of it. So don't get me wrong. My base station at the house is a little bit more spendy, probably a couple $1,000s. Not trying to brag, because you can spend $5,000 or $6,000 or $10,000 or $12,000 on a hobby like this if you wanted to. But my station is 100 watts. I have an antenna in the yard that I built out of wire and an old fishing pole, and I'm able to talk to people in New Zealand and people in Japan. So just get excited is really what's more important. Get in, get excited, get curious. How do I talk to the space station? Oh, okay, you can talk to the astronauts on the space station. Could you imagine trying to pick up your cell phone and call an astronaut?
That's amazing. That would
definitely happen. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
No, I mean picking up your cell phone.
Not on the cell phone.
Yeah,
not on the cell phone. Yeah, a bucket list is something I want to do in the ham radio world.
Yeah, but they'll talk to you on the space station through ham radio, no problem.
And can I do that? I could do that as with the technicians, or do I need to? Oh, okay. And then what kind of equipment, like how would I figure all that out to be able to do that?
So that's where you have a local ham club, or you go onto YouTube onto channels like mine, or we've got a Discord server where you can ask questions. And basically this hobby doesn't work by yourself. Ham radio, I mean, the hobby of communicating over radios doesn't work unless there's somebody else to talk to.
Yeah.
And when you get two people that both are interested in talking to each other over the radio, you're going to start talking about technical stuff. And there are no stupid people out there. I heard this saying, and I don't even know if it's good or bad, but there are no stupid people. There are no stupid questions, only stupid people, because they didn't ask the question.
Right.
Like feel free to.
I was going to say, there's definitely some stupid people.
Yeah.
Included.
No stupid questions, only stupid people.
Yeah, including.
But I'm trying to say that in a non-derogatory way.
Right.
Yeah.
No,
so
I get it where you're going.
What's going to happen is you're going to get a radio, you're going to get an antenna. You're not going to know what to do. You're not going to know how to communicate. You're not going to know what the protocols are for how you talk to people, and you just find somebody local. They'll help you get it set up. I mean, once you get a call sign, my call sign is KM9G, so I'm in the 9 call region. You can go out. There's a bunch of websites that'll tell me all the hams that are in my area, and there's actually a lot of people in my sub 1,000 population town that have ham licenses. I've got people that are less than a mile away that have a ham license, and I can call my friend Rod up. He lives up the street, and I can say I'm having trouble tuning my antenna, and he'll show up with a little. They call this a nano VNA. This is a $50 piece of gear, and it's built off of some relatively open technologies. I'm going to pull it out of the box here for you.
Oh, cool! Yeah, man. And, you're like pulling out this ham radio stuff like dudes pull out guns on this show, man. That's awesome. So this is a tuner.
This is an antenna analyzer. You would be the one that actually does the tuning. You plug the antenna into this, and it'll tell you where you need to make changes. And you got to have a little bit of brain power to understand it. If you're trying to get onto a certain band and it's resonant below or above, you have to make the antenna longer or shorter. Okay. And Rod just came over and said, "Here, have this thing, use it for a while, and let me know when you're done." And so I borrowed it for a couple of days and gave it back to him. I liked it. It's $50. I bought my own. That's not an expensive price for a vector network analyzer. I mean, it's not the highest quality laboratory grade instrument, but at the same time, I'm just trying to talk to a friend of mine. I'm not trying to save the planet here,
Yeah. And I notice a lot of folks in the ham radio world are very friendly and open and helpful to other people getting into this. I think even in the gun world, it's the same thing. Like if you're interested in guns and you know someone who's a gun guy, ask them to take you to a range or something like that sometime.
Oh yeah,
I'm sure they'll be happy to
the range.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's the same thing with the ham radio world, that people out there are always happy to show you stuff or talk to you about this. If you don't know, so definitely do that same thing there. There's a couple of different questions and comments coming in. Lola says, aren't even the expensive radios also made in China, like Baofengs? It's just the capabilities that go up with the price. What would how would you answer that? Because I think that's what everyone says, like, don't get this because it's just like something cheap made in China.
I think that price or money should never be a barrier to entry. That's why I compare Baofangs to High Points. They're affordable guns, they work, and if that's what you can afford, get that and defend yourself. Go ahead.
Yeah, so there's this people complain about stuff made in China all the time, and basically everything is made in China, and if it's not made in China, at least half the parts inside of it are made in China. That's the way the world is today. I would buy an American-made radio if there was an American-made radio that did the thing for the price point. The Baofeng that everybody complains about, the thing that makes this work, I can go buy 10 of these and give them to my school, and if nobody in the school gets interested in them, who cares? I'm out $250. If the kids love them and take them all home and accidentally drop it out of the car window, it's only $25. I've only lost $25. If I take this radio here is $1,200.
Right. I mean, that's without even that cage that you've got on it, man. Yeah, that's without the cage and the antenna and all that stuff.
The cage is another $100 and some on top of that.
Right.
The antenna, this antenna was probably $30, and I have another antenna that was $300 that goes on it. I mean, and I've got an amplifier that's another $400 or $500 that goes with the radio, and it's a whole kit. And I'm not trying to brag about prices, but I expect something different out of a $1,200 radio than I expect out of a $25 radio. And I get what I get out of a 12. I get every penny of my $25 out of that radio, and I don't know that I'm smart enough to get every penny of the $1,200 out of this radio yet.
Right.
But it's a lot of fun to play with, regardless. And
Yeah.
you know, this one here was $600 and some, and I've had a lot more fun with this radio than I have with the. I'm trying to keep the glare out. Than I have with the.
No, that's a
the
very cool.
radio.
Yeah, that's a. What is the name of that radio again?
This is the Xiegu X6100.
Okay.
And this is an HF only. They call it QRP. QRP means low power. It's a radio that can only put out 10 watts.
Okay.
Off to the. Can I do the camera trick?
Yes.
Off to the side over
Should
here.
be able to.
This is an ICOM 7300. This is a $1,000 radio, and it's a 100-watt radio. So the people that I can talk to on the $1,000 100-watt radio are more than the people. There's more people that I can talk to than there are on the 10-watt radio, and that's where skill comes into play. And the only way you get skill is through practice.
Absolutely. One of the things I really enjoy about your channel is that you do, take time to show people ways of saving money doing this stuff. So, like one of your videos I was looking at, I like is it Geochron?
Yep.
I think it's Geochron. Yeah. It's this really cool thing that you get. You can attach it to a 4K TV, and you can see the whole planet and all different time zones, and where's the International Space Station and all. It's awesome. But that thing on its own, I think, is it about $400 or $500 maybe?
It's expensive, yeah.
Yeah. And it's very cool. I'm not saying it's not worth it, because I think it's cool. I would love to get one. But you had a video about how someone could just do some coding and kind of make
one on
their
a
own.
Raspberry Pi. Yep. It's called Ham Clock.
Right.
And it doesn't do exactly the same thing, but it does some similar things. I've got a video that's coming out now where...
With Arms List, you can shop the extensive list of local and nationwide firearms classified, now with more confidence because of their built-in firewall. For only $6.99 a month for personal use, or $30 a month for business vendors. So when you're in the market, please consider Arms List. We wouldn't be able to keep the Who Moved My Freedom podcast going without the support of great companies like Arms List.
Okay, sorry about that. I got real excited and didn't even notice the time going by there. Sorry, where did you cut off there? I think you were telling us.
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about Ham Clock. Ham Clock is a piece of software that you run on a Raspberry Pi. You plug it into whatever old TV you have. It works great on the 7-inch 800 by 480 official Raspberry Pi touchscreen. What I'm playing with now is I have a bunch of old computer screens. I've got two 24-inch HD screens, and then because of the Commodore 64 stuff, I have two 24-inch TVs, and these things aren't expensive. They're like $100 a piece, but I'm putting them on a 4-arm holding thing, and I'm going to run like windy.com on one, and I'm going to run PSK Reporter on the other, and so I'm going to have this ham display behind me. And again, I'm still below the cost of the Geochron, and now I've got 4 different screens of information instead of just one. So there'll be a video on that coming out soon. Yeah,
that's what I like about what you're doing. And I think, with how many different hobbies can you have going on, right? At some point you do have to think about the money. So it makes it easier to get into things and do things if you're not spending money.
once you catch the bug, you're gonna be spending money. Yeah, but hey, there's alternatives to everything.
Yeah, so Armament and Axis has a good question that I can't answer with a quick chat message, so I'll just go
Okay.
ahead and grab it here. He says, "Can I get internet access with ham radio?" The short answer is yes. The longer answer is, with your ham radio license, you're not allowed to do anything that has a
Code?
fiduciary
Oh.
interest in it, a monetary interest in it.
Hmm.
So I can't go to Amazon and buy something. I can't do anything that's encrypted, so I wouldn't want to put my credit card in it anyway. However, I can do what they call packet radio. So I can connect to like old school bulletin board style type systems, and I can send email with a regular email client. It's called WinLink. We can send digital communications. We can tunnel through the internet. We can set up our own local communications network using more high power than your typical Wi-Fi router.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
could
so
do.
he's saying
There's
not exactly ham radio, but radio frequency Wi-Fi. Yep.
Yeah, that's from Asper Warrior. And I think, what is it? I forgot what it's called. Something low. But there is a ways I've seen ham radio guys messing around with it. You can set up your own, like in your neighborhood kind of network, the internet for if the regular internet goes down. That there's guys, they have, I guess they're like little repeaters, and sometimes they put it on solar power or whatever, and I think it's like a 5-mile radius, so you just have to build a net every 5 miles at least, overlapping, and then you could spread that out as big as you want to go, right?
Yeah, for sure. And the only thing that you have to be aware of is that the FCC currently limits the speed at which you can communicate. So I think it's 9600 baud is the fastest you can go. So if you're going to send messages or something along those lines, you want to send it very, very brief and to the point. You don't want to send like a big picture. So an example would be in the event of a disaster, a tornado rips through the town and people are without communications and without power and so on, and they want to get these wellness messages out, like the family's okay, the dog is fine, etc. You don't want to send a picture, a 12 megapixel picture of your destroyed house over ham radio, because it's going to take forever. You just want to send a quick message. Wife and kids are fine. House is toast. We are getting in the car and headed your way. See you in 4 hours. That's the kind of message you want to send.
Yeah. Do you recall what that's called exactly?
That's called WinLink. And so as a ham radio operator at the other side of a disaster like that, the service that I can provide would be to set up a wellness station like that, as opposed to showing up in my my bright yellow vest with my bright red Baofeng radio, acting like I know what I'm talking about and getting in the way of FEMA or the Red Cross or something like that. I can be way off to the side, way out of everybody's, emergency situation, and I can just send this. They call them radiograms. I can send these radiograms back and forth and get the message out that everybody's okay.
Okay, very cool. Now, Asper Warrior is also out there. He says he wants to know, what do radio nerds think about helium RF internet, HRT crypto mining? So some of that I understand, some I don't.
Yeah. So if he's talking about what I think he's talking about, that is a cryptocurrency technology where I go and I set up an internet connection that's open and available, and the more people that use my internet connection through my radio, and this is all legal radio type stuff, not license required or ham radio type stuff, I will get paid back in cryptocurrency units of whatever the current equivalent of dollars that is for that service that I put out to the public. And there's two things that are really good about that. Number one is it gets internet into areas where internet might not be readily available. It's trying to get this situation where I will have this ubiquitous internet all around me all the time. And then it also gets people interested in radio, and we all need more radio nerds.
Absolutely. Everyone's a budding radio nerd out there. I'm just trying to see. Lola wanted me to tell you. So there's this. When we went to Hamcation, right? From the time we got to the gate, the ham radio guys are helping us. So there was a guy who was volunteering as security at the gate, and he helped us figure out where we were parking the van because he was parked close to it. His wife turned out to be one of the the VEs, volunteer
examiners. Yep.
Yeah, when we were taking our test, and we actually became kind of cool with that couple, and we invited them because I think they came here from where was it? I think Washington State. They came all the way out to Florida for Hamcation, And we were like, hey, if you guys are going through Florida, stop by and visit us. They did. They came here, they visited us, they were showing us a whole bunch of different ham radio things and helping us out, pointing us in the right direction and all that. And I think now Lola and I, the next time we're in Washington State, we'll be visiting them. So these are some people. In February, when we showed up at that gate, we didn't know these people. You know, it's the same kind of thing. Like, I met you there at that show, and you know, we're doing podcasts. So
yeah,
I like the community, man. It's a very cool, helpful community. You know, there's some parallels to the gun world. I will say this, Steve. You know, I don't necessarily want to give out any names, but I always think it was funny that you and Sean, I don't know if you remember this, but you guys threw up some kind of line antenna, and you were getting on the air, and I think you were talking to people in other countries, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
It's from Orlando. But when you first did it, there was a guy there that had like a radio, and you know, he was like, okay, I got a radio, you guys were doing it. Then there were some people trying to show the signal that was coming in, and I don't think you could do it on the guy's radio, so someone was like, oh, do you have an ICOM, blah, blah, blah. I think it's the one you have. And yeah. And so another guy brought that out, and everyone just ignored this guy. And I was like, wow, I thought only the gun world was like this, you know?
So we tried to, there was some question about, you know, how do you know where the signal is, or what to tune into, or something along those lines. And the radio that the one guy had didn't have what's called a spectrum scope. So it just had a dial on it, and on the dial it just had numbers, and that was it. And these radios here, let me turn this one here on, it'll take a second to boot it up. These radios have a waterfall display on them, and you can tell your ID52 has a waterfall display on it.
Yes, it does. Yeah, I'll boot mine up too.
So you can see like dark blue is like static and noise, and bright yellow is an actual signal.
Right. I'll turn mine on so you guys can see the. So for example, I'm in the. Yeah, there you go. I'm in the van. I don't know if this is even gonna like show up properly. Here, I gotta probably block my own face. There we go. Boom.
Yeah, awesome.
So there you go. There's the waterfall on mine. So yeah, that's. I mean, and I know it seems kind of silly, but I like looking at the waterfall.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
So on my radio here, you'll see this stripe. There's some signal going on where that stripe is, and I can tune my dial to zoom in on that stripe. Let me get it back up on the screen for you. You see how that stripe is moving closer to the center?
Yeah, right.
And I'm spinning that knob, so I'm hunting down that signal.
So you can see there's something going there, right? Now you just went a little past it.
Yeah, because I'm going backwards.
So now, but that could be anything, right? That could literally be some kind of device, not even a radio, right?
Yeah, that's some interference. And now, that's because I don't have an antenna hooked up to this radio. That's just some localized interference. It's probably these lights.
Yeah. So now right there you committed a cardinal sin, man. You've got your radio on with no antenna. Is that a myth?
Yeah, I live on the edge. I'm not worried about that. The reason why is you might accidentally transmit into. So I guess an analogy would be for people who use bow and arrow or crossbow. If you release the bow without an arrow, all that energy goes somewhere it's not supposed to go and causes all kinds of havoc. And if you are using a radio without an antenna and you key down on the transmitter and you send out a signal, all that power goes somewhere. And when that power goes somewhere it's not supposed to go, it causes problems. And in radios, that means burnt out final transistors, so that would be expensive. You've got Armament Axis asking if we can make a contact on the radio right now.
Yeah,
I am not set up to do that, but we could have planned a little bit better, and I could have been set up to do that, and he could have been set up to do that.
Yeah,
he's got an ID52 D-Star radio. I have the 705 D-Star radio. My internet hotspot is turned off right now because I just rearranged all my ham shack stuff. And if that was on, I'd be able to do it. My 705, I could do it, but I would need to get back into terminal mode and connect, and he'd need to get into terminal mode, and we'd need to find a reflector that we could both connect to. And we could do that through the internet. The other way that we can do that is if Hank was to upgrade to a general class license and get himself an HF station, and then we could get connected that way.
So. Yeah. So technically, it is possible. One, through
We'll
the
do that
internet.
in a future show.
Yes, absolutely. We can do that in a future show through the internet. And then I'm sure folks here will be like, well, what if there's no internet? Without that general, I guess repeaters are not really gonna. You're in Wisconsin?
Yeah, I'm in Wisconsin. So
Yeah.
what Hank's talking about now, Hank has a technician license, and there's 3 different levels of licenses. You have the technician, which is your starter license. You have the general, which is the next license up, and then you have the extra license, which is the license that I have. And all it means is that I know more test questions than Hank knows. It doesn't mean that I'm any smarter than he is or anything along those lines. But it gives me more frequency privileges. So Hank can use anything above 10 megahertz. 10 megahertz, anything above 10 meters. So 10 meters, 6 meters, 2 meters, 70 centimeters, 1.2 gigahertz. You can go all the way to 10 gigahertz and higher than that. I can use all of those frequencies plus frequencies that are a lot lower. The lower frequencies, we're getting real nerdy here. The lower frequencies will bounce off the ionosphere, and they will travel in these waves where it bounces off the ionosphere, bounces off the ground, bounces off the ionosphere, etc., and keeps making this propagation, is what the word is, around the planet. And that's how I'm able to make those long distance communications. And Hank just needs to take another test, and then we'd be right up there and be able to do that.
Yeah, I think general, you said, right? That
General, yep.
Yeah, Armin and Axis says yes, without internet, all good. Be cool to see. Yeah, we'll make some future plans for that. I'm not sure when I'm getting my general, probably next year. But for example, if you were in Florida, right, and you could get on like a repeater on the SARnet here, we would be able to speak to each other right now. So
yeah, I could get onto a repeater in North Florida, and you could be in the Keys, and we could make a conversation through. They're called linked repeaters.
Yeah.
And so there's a bunch of hams that operate all of these different repeaters that are then all connected together. So when I key up in North Florida, it'll link all the way through all of the repeaters without infrastructure of the public, the on-grid kind.
Right.
All the way down. Yep.
Yeah. Now, so how come there's not a nationwide repeater network?
Well, this is all volunteer type stuff, and the fact that you can't have any commercial interest in it really limits what people do. I can't call Domino's Pizza down the street on my ham radio and complete the transaction. Okay. Because it's not allowed. So why would Domino's want to put any money into putting up a ham radio tower on top of their restaurant so that I can order a pizza from them?
Yeah. Illegally. Now, technically, you can actually use your ham radio to make a phone call, right? Because I know that the guy I was telling you about, my friend Brad, who's been doing this since the 80s, said that he used to be able to do it, and you could still do it. You can use your ham radio and actually connect to telephone lines and make calls.
Yeah, it's called auto patch, and that's something where you have a repeater. So the group of people in your ham radio club local to you have put up this tower. They put up a radio system. They put in a connection to the phone line, and then you can make that call. So you're dialing, you're in your car keying up on your radio to go to the repeater. You punch a bunch of keys on the keypad on the front of the radio, and from the front of the radio, you would dial like star 572, which then tells the repeater to go into auto patch mode, and then you would punch in the phone number, and then you could call your significant other and say, hey, I'm on my way home, traffic's pretty bad, big snowstorm, I'll be a little delayed, just letting you know everything's fine. But you don't want to make it a long conversation, because there are other dudes that are trapped in their car in a big bad snowstorm that want to talk to their wives and say everything's fine.
Yeah, and you also have to follow the general rules of amateur radio, right? So no cursing, etc.
Yep. And communicate your call sign every 10 minutes.
Yeah, all those things. But that's amazing to think, And I think I was reading somewhere that there were people that would volunteer. I don't know, maybe I saw that somewhere, that would volunteer to make communications with, let's say, people serving, from one place to another, and do connect calls. And I think there was like a famous politician who did it. I could be wrong. Maybe it was Bob Dole or one of those guys that did that a lot, and he would volunteer to do that and make the phone call connection so that people serving in the military could communicate.
Yeah, so every single day there's what they call a traffic net. So this is a piece of traffic that came across the traffic system, and I did a show on how to do this, and then somebody sent a piece of traffic to me, and I didn't get it over the air. And this this bill person here actually dropped this thing into an envelope and stuck it in the mail and sent it to me.
Wow.
So this person here, let's see if I can say it. It says no phone, temporarily offline at gmail.com is my email address. And Marcus K04 CES. So a 4 call is going to be in your area, Florida area. Saw my show, got on his local traffic net, sent it, and then the Wisconsin traffic net picked this up. K9NY picked it up from Fall Creek, Wisconsin, and then sent it up to me in Luck, Wisconsin. Yeah. So this came from Holly Hill, Florida.
Where?
You know, Holly Hill, Florida.
Holly Hill. Okay. Yes, I've heard of that. Yeah. That's really cool. That's old school stuff right there. Armament and Axis is saying, yeah, we can curse on our CB radios, laugh out loud. Is that true? I don't think that's true, is it?
I think it's illegal, but there's nobody policing it to tell you you can't.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like going 55 in a 50-mile-an-hour zone.
Yeah, have you ever done a video? I mean, you know, I'm annoying like this. I'll have a whole bunch of ideas of what you can make videos on. Have you ever
You're welcome to make a video on my channel anytime you want, Hank.
You know, yes, we will. We'll make some videos together. You know, and actually when I met you, you were like, hey man, if you want to figure out how to use your radio, we'll get online and we'll
do it.
Yeah, we'll do some stuff. So it would be cool to get a video on all the things that people do to annoy people on amateur radio that they shouldn't do.
Yep.
You know, because I know I was listening to it wasn't the SARnet, but it was another repeater, and there was a guy, I think it was when I was in Alabama, and there was a guy getting on there and kerchunking all the time, which is basically like pushing the talk button on the radio just to interrupt other people talking. You know, and that's bad form, right? Bad form.
There are undesirable people everywhere, in every hobby, in every walk of life. You will find the anti-hobby person. I don't know what you call them.
Yeah,
we call them lids.
Yeah,
I
think LID. Okay, and what does that mean?
I don't know. I just know it's a generic term to describe somebody who is rather ignorant about what they're supposed to be doing.
Right. I think it all started because this guy got on there and said something like, let's go Brandon, which, hey, I'm fine with. But even when I heard that, I was like, oh, I thought these guys don't talk about politics or anything like that over the airwaves. And so a couple of people came on and said, hey, we don't discuss politics over the airwaves. And then the guy got mad and just started chunking in or playing music off the radio.
Hurt.
Yeah. Yeah, he was just messing up everything for everyone else. Like, man, that's
you can get fined for that, but it's you have to cause a really, really, really big disturbance in order to run up against that fine.
Okay, I know we've got like 45.
Be worth it.
Yeah, we've got 45 seconds or less than that. But does the FCC actually go after anyone, or do they really have to do bad stuff?
You really have to do something bad before the FCC gets involved.
Okay.
Because they don't have time. They don't have the time or the resources to police that kind of thing.
So people get away with stuff. So there's no way to deal with that person, huh? We can't like send a virus through to their radio and knock them out.
Well, I mean, I know their call sign, which is attached to their address, so I know where they live, and I have the intelligence to do radio direction finding and narrow down where they're transmitting from. So, I mean, there's a lot of public knowledge that exists.
Yeah, we're gonna go to a break here. We'll be right back. Coming right back.
We wouldn't be able to keep the Who Moved My Freedom podcast going without the support of a DAO, or decentralized autonomous organization like TUSC Crypto. TUSC cryptocurrency is a firearm-friendly e-commerce option for online payment transactions, secured on the blockchain. So when you're in the crypto market, please consider TUSC, TUSC.
So now, Armin and Axis says those are radio trolls, just like internet trolls. You know. So now, can you really track everyone down? Like, of course, if a guy has a call sign, you could track him down. But how often does a guy with a call sign do that? Is it more often people who just don't have a license? Maybe they have a Bofang or something else, and they're just using their airwaves.
So there's a lot of people that are unlicensed that go out. I mean, you can just go to Amazon and buy one of these radios. There's nothing that's you don't have to prove that you have a license or anything. So there are people that will do those kind of things. it's not that frequent, and they typically hang out in the exact same spot everywhere. So on the 40 meter band, you can go to 7.200 and you'll hear a lot of interesting people. And you can go to a website, WebSDR, Web Software Defined Radio, so WEBSDR.org, and you can listen. You can pick a receiver somewhere in the vicinity of where you want to hear, and then you can tune it to 7.200 and you can hear these people, and it's kind of shocking how intelligent they are. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
And what would I need to do to find one of those? It would be more effort than I care to put in, but it is doable. It's possible to find them.
Yeah. When Lola and I were driving back here, it was around, so when we were in Alabama, that's around the time when the slap heard around the world happened. Right? The Will Smith slapping Chris Rock.
Yep.
And there were people broadcasting that over the airwaves. And I was like, wow, this is, and I was just going through someplace and scanning. So I was just on the highway scanning, and I came across that, and I was like, okay, there's interesting stuff out here. People,
a friend of mine and I had a really interesting conversation about that, and I really wasn't sure where I'd fall on that. So we were just kind of having one of those, we're two intelligent people that's explore the space about that whole Chris Rock, Will Smith thing, and it was interesting how it fell down because he didn't have the right to do that. And then, like, was it morally right to stand up for your spouse, or was it wrong, or where does all that go? From a concealed carry perspective, that was wrong.
I agree with you. Go ahead.
I was gonna say if he felt that way and then pulled out his concealed carry piece and shot Chris Rock, that would be a definite no-no. That would be against the law.
Yeah, I think in lots of ways it was wrong. I really can't think of too many ways that it was right. I mean, a lot of people try to use the rationalization of, well, he was defending his wife. I think that's null. That whole defending the wife thing is null and void if you and your wife are both actors and actress. She's an actress, he's an actor in Hollywood. They voluntarily went to the Academy Awards. That, especially in the last, I don't know. I mean, I haven't looked at it in a long time, really, to be honest with you. But I think in the last 10 years, it's really become kind of like a roast. So he
knew
what
he was getting into.
Yeah, the rules going in, that you're going there and, everyone's getting being made fun of. And if you looked around in the room, like we all saw this video, there's all these other celebrities in there that Chris Rock was roasting. I think if you voluntarily go into a situation like that, you have no business putting your hands on anyone, right? And then on top of that, someone making fun of your wife, even if she has something that makes her lose hair or whatever. I mean, it's like, there's things that, yes, if someone said that to you about your wife, you're going to get really mad. But still, even then, even if he would have said something that was really horrible, do you really have the right to just assault a guy?
No, and the thing that was really interesting to me, my friend came up with this thought. Will Smith really had the ability to do a lot more harm quietly, silently behind the scenes, pulling some puppet strings than he did with that slap on stage.
Yeah, well, I think, and it goes deeper than that, into like personal stuff. I mean, I think he's been emasculated just by the whole relationship that they decided to put out there. I'm a libertarian when it comes to things of a personal nature for people. I don't care what people's preferences are.
Right.
Especially the bedroom's not my business if if it doesn't involve children.
Right.
Or people who don't volunteer themselves for that. Then it's not our business.
Informed consent? What?
Yeah. But if you're in the business of making all of that public to people, you can't really get mad about it. But it does seem like he just had a lot of pent-up aggression over that. And it just also seemed to me that was really bullying. He clearly had an advantage over Chris Rock. I've met Chris Rock a few times in my life, and he's not an alpha male.
No.
Yeah. No. He's just, and I'm not trying
to
say it in a bad way.
He portrays all these alpha males all the time, and we pay him a lot of money to portray all these alpha
males. I don't think Will Smith is an alpha
thing, and we get mad at him.
Well, and I don't even really think Will Smith is an alpha male, because I have to say that real alpha males would not do things like that. Okay, if we go to the animal side of what we call an alpha male, if you look at any, wolves, lions, or whatever, they don't really do that. You'll see like a little baby cub or whatever playing around with the alpha, and he doesn't hurt him or do anything like that, right?
There's a way like that, like they do that mouthing thing, where they don't like pinch and draw blood and kill. They just kind of
Yeah, you see dogs even doing it. Yeah, if you're into dogs, you'll see dogs doing that. So a real alpha male does not have to prove that to people. A real alpha male only goes into that mode when it's absolutely necessary to do it, if there's really a threat or something like that. I think, Will Smith, because of whatever his issues are, and because of the fact that he's an actor, he chose someone that was an easy target. If he really wanted to be a badass, he could have waited until like The Rock was up there and try that.
Right, yeah. That would have been funny. So, I mean, they're
sure
making
he
some
wouldn't
points
be
in the
here
chat,
right
and I totally agree with this. Like, I hadn't seen the Academy Awards ever.
Yeah.
And that is the only part of the Academy Awards that I have seen in my life, was that one scene, and I have not been able to stop seeing it because no one will let me.
Right.
But I didn't see anything before that. I didn't see anything after that. I didn't see it last year, the year before.
Right.
I don't care.
I've always been interested in filmmaking. So when I was younger, I did look at the Oscars and all that, and there was a time in my life where I considered actually going to Hollywood. I have a friend that went out to Hollywood, and I don't know if we can say he made it, but I see him still in TV commercials. So I've looked at those things. Like, I used to look at the Grammys, and I used to look at the Oscars, and then of course, just growing up as a kid, back in the days, you only had one TV, and my mom was basically in charge of that, and she watched those things also. But as an adult, I've completely lost interest in it. I mean, they don't even reward the people making the movies that the general population enjoys, Right. It's always some artsy, which is fine, but there's always like political messages and all kinds of subliminal programming that's trying to get pushed on people instead of just pure. I feel like we're losing actual entertainment.
Yep.
Do you remember that? We used to be able to look at movies and it was just a cool movie, and we didn't feel like we were getting knocked upside the head with some kind of indoctrination or
agenda.
something.
Yeah, there's always some kind of agenda going on. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know. Like, early Star Trek was trying to explore the space, and I don't feel like the early Star Trek shows were pushing an agenda. I think they were just exploring the space, and now there are these shows where they're trying to push an agenda that doesn't make sense to be pushed in that direction. And I don't know. I don't know where we're going with it.
Yeah.
But,
every single time it's disturbing to me. I mean, I think, wow, you just don't want to entertain people anymore. You just want to, just shove things on people. And I guess that we've always had an element of that, but it's gotten really bad, and I think a lot of people are tuning out. And that's why you and I are in the business, if you want to look at it that way, that we're in. That even though there's a lot of content creators, lots of people putting stuff on YouTube and Utreon that we're on now, and all the different social medias, lots of video going up, but there's also lots of people still consuming it because there's a lot of crap out there coming from the establishment.
Yeah, and the stuff that we put up, I mean, like the you mentioned it earlier, my ham clock video, that will never make Friday night primetime television.
It was awesome.
And it's not designed to. But I don't watch Friday night primetime television. I want to know the best way to use my Kubota mini tractor to level a new campground on my property here. I want to know when the best time to plant seeds is. I want to know what the best sites are to modify my M&P. I want to know these kinds of things, and you're not going to find that. I'm a knowledge seeker. I'm a knowledge sharer, and I want to be in that space. And entertainment type stuff, there's a place for it for sure, but I spend more of my time watching educational, inspirational type stuff on YouTube than I do watching television. I haven't had a over-the-air or cable TV subscription since 1999, 2000.
Oh wow! Okay, you got me beat. Yeah, I think I dropped that in about 2008 or 9.
Once cable internet came out, I got rid of cable TV.
Yeah, so. But also, listen, I have to say this: you are entertaining, you are funny.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
there was a video that I was looking at. We were talking about all the FCC changes in fees and all that, and I look at your stuff, man, and there was this video that came on talking about how the FCC was changing the phonetic alphabet. And
Yeah.
I'm freaking looking at this. I'm looking at this video, and there's a lot of you guys have to look. I can't like actually repeat how funny this was, because I'm like, what the hell is Steve talking about? I was a good 3 minutes or at least into this, and he's come up with this phonetic stuff, and I was like, no, hold on a second. And then I looked at my phone. I was like, oh, it's April 1st. Damn it.
April Fool. I gotcha. Yeah. This is Steve, Mnemonic 9 gnome here.
Yeah, it was really
Did the whole
funny.
thing
So
all straight faced. I had slides to show the new alphabet, and
yeah,
it was.
You had me going. You had me going for
a while to build that one.
Yeah,
and I got a phone call on that one.
Uh-huh.
I took the logo of a certain public-facing organization and changed it.
Yeah,
I made it the AFRL.
Yeah,
the April
they didn't
Fool's
like that.
Radio.
Yeah,
they didn't like that.
No,
they asked me to take it down, and they're good friends, so I took it down. But
okay.
I just thought it was part of the gag. I thought it was funny.
No, it was funny. It was funny. Next time, make it the AFT or something like that.
Yeah, definitely.
I've had the NRA actually ask me. So there was a time I made a positive video for the NRA, which I'm not a huge fan of these days. But I made a positive video for the NRA, and I had the red letters and everything from the NRA in there. And their lawyer sent me a cease and desist.
Yep.
You cannot,
I've brushed up against that a lot, yeah.
Yeah, so after that, I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to put regular big red NRA letters in there. I don't even waste my time talking about them now. What is it? ARRL?
The American Radio Relay League, or the League,
they're cool.
Which is a lot easier to say.
Yeah, those are cool folks, and you always want to support the organizations that are supporting what you're doing. So like for amateur radio, etc., you want to support those places. What are the other organizations? Is it just that, or are there other places?
Yeah, so there's one I think there's one for every country. I mean, there's the IARU, the International Amateur Radio Union, or something like that, and then there's the RSGB or Ofcom, OFCOMM in Europe, and then like Australia has their own, New Zealand has their own, and the US it's the FCC, and then the corollary to the FCC is the private version, the ARRL, where we're trying to like maintain our freedoms the same way that the NRA will try to maintain the gun holders' freedoms, our freedoms also. So it's a lobbying organization, a publishing organization. ARRL does a lot of scholarships for youth. $500,000 in scholarships are available this year for anybody that wants to get into technical programs that are radio related. So lots of stuff out there.
Yeah. I'm just wondering how many people will call me the ARRL to complain of this when you did that thing. There were probably people like, "What?"
Yeah,
and they didn't even realize it.
We communicate with the ARRL quite a bit, and one of my friends works there, and he's like, "Hey, I'm getting a call from my boss. How long are you thinking about keeping that video up?" I'm like, "Oh, it's an April Fool's gag." I'm trying to like kind of. It's as long as possible.
Right, exactly.
So
it's about to go viral.
Yeah, that video did pretty well, so I was pretty happy with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought it was funny. I didn't realize. So you took it down. It's not up there, huh?
No, the video is still up, and it's actually still getting views. I just took their logo off of it.
Oh, okay.
And
okay.
It actually says in text April Fool's Relay League or April Fool's Radio League or something like that. So it's very clear that it's an April Fool's gag, and it was released on April 1st.
Yeah.
I've got one planned for next year already. I thought about that. I'm like, do I do that one instead? So who knows?
Yeah, I don't think we're getting Glen Tate today, so I haven't. Lola says she hasn't heard back from him. There could be something going on there. I mean, I think we're still having fun. We're having a great show. We may get him here in the future. I know that you're a fan of his work, right?
Oh, I'm a big fan of his work. Yeah, I read all the books, and he does a lot of exploring of the space, which I really like things that explore the space. So there's a situation in his book where he's doing all of this preparedness work for this eventual government fall, this government problem, and his family's not really on board with it. One of his kids is, the other one of his kids, I think, was too young, and then his wife wasn't really on board with it. And he got everything prepared, and finally he just had to go because the situation arose and he had to go. And I wanted to talk to Glenn about this because that would be a really tough decision to make, to leave the supplies behind for your family and then leave because you have to do these things in order to be alive to take care of your family. And his family eventually did come over and join him, and that went on in a couple of the books in the future. But that was a turning point in that book.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what happened. I know things come up, so and actually he was the one that he reached out to us. I had not actually heard of him before he reached out to us, but when we looked him up, we're like, oh, this guy sounds really cool. So I'm sure he'll be on, and when he comes back on, I'm gonna, as long as you're available, we'll love to have you come back to do that.
Yeah, I'd love to come back. It'd be great.
Yeah, have you heard of Angry American? He's also got.
I have.
Yeah.
The Going Home series?
Yes, Going Home.
Yeah, I just finished that one. That was great. There was a lot of radio stuff in there. He had a Yaesu 818 or something, and this is something that you have to have your license now in order to practice this stuff and be aware of this stuff and know how all this stuff works and be able to do these things. And the crew that he met up with in that book knew how to do all that stuff and set him up. So he would go and he'd toss a wire in the tree and he would make a local contact with the Yaesu radio, and they had all of their communications, their lingo down. They had their situations handled. He had a code book, and he was able to communicate back that there were some situations that were happening, and because this was after the fall, it was considered an emergency situation, so it could be coded.
Yeah. Go ahead. What did you see?
Oh, I'm looking at this comment in the chat. I remind him of Sheldon.
Yeah, Angry American's actually been here on the show. He's someone I know.
Excellent.
Yeah, he's here in Florida, and a lot of what he's talking about in those books is actually in the area that I live in. And I met him through the podcast because there were some people, I'm not sure if those folks are still listening to the podcast or not, but there were some people who were like, hey, this guy's talking about a lot of the kind of stuff that you're wanting to find out about and know about. You should check out his books and all that. And so his fans kind of put, him and I together, and then we actually had him on the show at least once or twice.
Excellent.
So I think that was back in the early days of the show, and his stuff is really good. It gets you thinking. And, going back to, years ago, when Lola and I first moved to Florida, we were living in West Palm Beach, and I remember having these nightmares about an apocalypse. And in my nightmares, I got separated from Lola and the kids. And then, it was really detailed. I'm actually a storyteller myself and very interested in not just making movies, but writing these kinds of books myself. And it was so detailed and so long, almost like how a book is. When you're reading a book, you feel like you're going through years sometimes, right? And I remember these dreams were like, I was trying to find the kids and all that kind of stuff, and then I would locate the kids, and the conditions that they were living under and all that kind of stuff was permeating my dreams. And it's the thing that pushed me to start figuring out how to defend myself and how to take care of myself and all of this stuff that we're talking about now. Just, exactly, I didn't even have to get scared reading those books,
I was working for the government in Northern Virginia, and we were in this high-rise building. I want to say I was on the 25th floor of like a 30-floor building. And so you drive, and I was driving an hour and a half into work, because that's what you do when you live in Northern Virginia area. You have to live somewhere and you have to drive somewhere, and those two somewheres aren't connected for any amount of money that I could afford.
Right, yeah.
And I drove into the office, so an hour and a half into the office, parked in the parking garage in the basement of the building, went up the elevator, out of the elevator, through the lobby, badged into the door, et cetera, et cetera. I'm in this...
The Who Moved My Freedom podcast is made possible by our partners at 2A Commerce. Veteran owned and with over 20 years experience, 2A Commerce is the leader in custom e-commerce and web application development in the shooting sports industry. Clients include major brands such as Guard Dog Body Armor, Sylvan Arms, AccuFire Technologies, The Tactical Games, Warrior Knife Company, and yours truly, Hank Strange. Visit 2A Commerce and support this show by supporting them. Once again, visit the number 2acommerce.com. Yeah, sorry about that. So you said you got off the elevator.
Yeah. So I'm on this 25th floor of this building, and we had a fire alarm go off, and everybody just left the building, which is what you're supposed to do. Don't get me wrong, but I'm sitting there in the plaza, like right next to the building that's supposedly on fire. I'm like, just down where the fountain and the plants and all are, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm an hour and a half from home. My car is in the basement of this building that's on fire, and I'm sitting out here in the plaza with nothing. I mean, all I've got is my cell phone. So, I mean, I can call for a ride, but this is ignorant. So I stopped parking in the building at least, and then I started looking for another job and got out of that mess. But, man, like, we talk about preppers in a bad light sometimes, and I identify as a prepper, but I don't really talk loudly about it because people laugh at you when you say it. But, like, man, that was a situation where I was just completely caught off guard, and it's an eye-opener, like you were saying. Like, you're separated from your family, and how do you get back there, and what do you do? And I mean, I would have to call for help, and it's an hour and a half away at the earliest in order to come out and get me, and that sucks.
Yeah, hold on a second. I think we might be getting Glen coming in now.
Hey,
hold
welcome.
on a second. Let's see. Hold on. I think we've got him. Let me see if I could.
The show's going to go into overtime today.
I don't know how your timing is, but let's see. Glen, can you hear us?
Hello.
Hey.
I'm so sorry.
What's
I'm
up,
so
man?
sorry. I got caught up in kind of an emergency thing at work, and that's not a good enough excuse. I kept you guys waiting, which is uncool. So, my apologies.
Oh, that's all right, man. We figured something happened, so we were just talking about you.
Oh, okay.
For the last hour and 45 minutes, nonstop.
Yeah. That's great radio. Like, when's this guy showing up? No,
right.
They don't like that. They don't like that at all.
No, we were just talking about, how the two of us got into being prepared. Let me introduce you. Well, first of all, I'm Hank Strange. I don't think we've ever actually met anywhere, unless I'm mistaken.
No, I'm Hank Strange.
Oh, okay, right.
Oh, okay. That's strange.
This is my friend Steve. He has a YouTube channel called Temporarily Offline. He is a ham radio guy.
Oh, okay. Very, very cool.
Very cool. And Steve, this is Glen Tate. And for the folks out there,
Glenn.
Glen is an author and a lawyer. And your stories. I just started your first in the series, the 299 Days.
Yeah.
I just started that today. I'm a few hours. I'm listening to it on audiobook. It's available on Audible for anyone out there. No, not at all. Audible refuses to do anything with me. But I still listen. It's a great service. So I just started that today, man. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Well, I'm great. I got to get past this apology thing that's going on.
You're good.
I grew up by the Canadian border, so I'm functionally Canadian, which means I apologize for everything. So
okay.
So you won't hear any more of that. But no, thank you for listening to the books. I have to say, the narrator is absolutely amazing. I think you would agree that the narrator is fabulous. Forget the content; just the narrator is enough reason to
absolutely
consider looking into the books.
Yeah, absolutely. If I don't like the narrator, I can't go that deep into an audiobook. I'll probably just read it, and listen to the voice in my mind is really sexy. So I don't know if that makes sense.
Your own voice in your
yes, exactly. That's one sexy dude. That voice in my brain. But no, the narrator is pretty good. Yeah, Steve is
funny.
Go ahead.
It's funny you mention that. Yeah, about your own voice sounds cooler to you than it does to other people. People said, "Well, why don't I just narrate it?" And I tried for about 30 seconds and I really sucked at it. There's like an entire art form. It is truly
It is.
part of the entertainment business. You need to have actual artist skills to do this, let alone the equipment. I mean, there's all kinds of engineering equipment that you need, but you can't do this with a cut rate narrator, and I didn't. So it was 10 years ago. So I got him while he was cheap. He's doing stuff for New York Times best-selling folks, and I couldn't afford him if I did a new book with him. So got in on the ground floor. So I can spot talent. I can spot talent.
Absolutely. No, that's cool. So, I don't know how much time you have. I don't know how much time Steve has here, or the folks out there. I'm happy. We've got at least still like another 12 minutes in this show. So we can go on here, or we could definitely go to the end of the show and then maybe have you come back some other time, because Steve was just saying that he's actually a big fan of your book. So I'm going to let him get some stuff in here. Yeah, Steve, you take over. What's some stuff you want to ask here?
Oh yeah, so I loved the whole book series, and it was one of the things that I first listened to. I moved out to an area in Wisconsin. I bought a 40-acre farm, and while I'm doing all of my farm work, I've got my headset on listening to the audiobook, and I'm like, yep, this is why I came out here. I got away from all of that nonsense, all of that mess. And yep, you're absolutely right. The politicians are not in it for us. They're in it for themselves. And I can see that they think that they're smarter than we are and all that jazz. And a lot of the stuff that you wrote in that book just totally resonated with me. One of the things that I read in the book, and I guess it's kind of a spoiler, but I already spoiled it before you came on the show. There's this section where you've got to leave your family behind. And I wanted to ask you, like, how did that come about? How did you go through that? What was the decision there? Just go into that a little bit.
Yeah, that's a really great question. You're only the second person to ever ask me that question. I think it's probably the best question to ask about the book, because it involves a really heavy topic, and I had to, at least in fiction, but my wife at the time, since divorced, I thought she'd read it. Turns out she didn't, which is probably one of the reasons we got divorced. But anyway, this isn't the why Glen got divorced hour, because that's not good radio.
Welcome,
Nobody
Glen.
wants to hear that.
Oh, yeah.
Hi, my name's Glen Tate. I'm a divorcee.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
But so I figured she would end up reading it, so I put a lot of thought into whether I was going to have the story go that way. The story really can't go any other way and still be credible, because it's a story based on real stuff, which is my life. And at that time, she wouldn't have gone with me if, an event occurred. And one of the reasons that the 299-day series is different than others is that it's so real. And I dealt with stuff that regular people deal with. So many prepper fiction series involve, SEAL Team 6 guys. I'm not a SEAL Team 6 guy. I mean, no. And most people in the audience aren't.
No.
And so it was, I think, kind of refreshing realism for a regular guy, warts and all, to go through those kind of struggles and write it down. But as far getting to the substance of what you're talking about, survival is a pretty serious business. And if you decide that you have to go on your own, it's horrible. I don't say it's easy at all. But you got to do what you got to do. I think a whole lot of people are going to stay with non-prepared people just out of loyalty or habit or whatever it may be, guilt maybe, and they're probably going to end up dying. And I wasn't going to be one of those people, both in the book and in real life. So it was a really difficult chapter. A really good friend of mine, who I respect a lot, was mad at me for like 6 months after he read the books, because he thought what a jerk I was for even contemplating that, because he said, how could you possibly do that? He's since come around, so that's cool. That's why he's a good friend. But I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, for sure. I also like the slogan that you came up with for the artwork, the I Miss America. That was pretty good.
Yeah, I have to give credit where credit is due, and that's with Merle Haggard. He has a song, and I was listening to it one day, and he just mumbles in the song. It's not a chorus or anything. He just says, I miss America, and I get goosebumps. I physically have goosebumps just saying it every single time, because those three words summarize the way a lot of us think. And of course, it becomes an important part of the storyline where the good guys who are trapped behind enemy lines in occupied areas tag things with "I Miss America," and it really rallies people because those 3 words, it really cuts through the clutter and gets right down to what's on our minds for the most part, what's on our minds. And that was a great thing. So I have to give, like I say, credit, Merle Haggard. Thank you, Merle. Rest your soul.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a couple of things in there. I don't know if, I don't know if anyone has any questions or comments. I would say that, I'm right in the first book right now, and I was really sucked into it because it's more, I think there's a foreword in the book talking about, I don't think you were talking badly about other books that are out there, but you were just saying that you were trying to make this a more real or human or, relatable kind of a thing, right? And I think I got sucked in right away because even in my own life I could relate to, just even in the beginning part of the story, the things that you were talking about,
Yeah, you're right. I'm not talking bad about other books. There are tons of great prepper fiction series out there. I've only read a couple of them. I've read 1 Second After and Patriots, of course, and that's about it because I don't read books, which sounds really weird.
No,
Time commitment, man.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah.
I mean, look at me. I was late for this because I work all the time, and so I don't have time to read. But it was good that I didn't read other books because I wasn't trying to copy anything. It's absolutely fresh. People say, it's hilarious. They say, "Oh, you're so creative, Glenn, because all this dialogue is so amazing." It's not creative at all. It's not creative writing. It's what me and my friends say. It's many of the things in book 1, the banter among the team. It's stuff we actually said. And Pow, and you'll get to know Pow later on. He's the 6-foot Korean gunfighter who sells insurance. In real life, he's a 6-foot Korean gunfighter who sells insurance.
Right. Okay.
You can see how creative I am.
There, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I just happen to know interesting, cool people. And but anyway, I was talking to him, and he was talking to me, and he said, "Is this conversation going to end up in a book?" And I said, "It very likely will." Yeah, probably will.
Probably, yeah.
So that's why the dialogue is different. I'm not going to say better. I'm just going to say different than most dialogue because I wasn't trying. I never thought anyone would read these books. I didn't write them for anyone to read them. I just couldn't stop writing them. And then I sent in 10 books to the first publisher that I sent them to, who said, "Do you want a 10-book deal?" which is unheard of. I was more surprised than anybody. And then I had a problem. See, I figured if people by mistake bought the books, which is kind of what I thought they would do, because again, I didn't think anyone would ever read them, and that turned out to be wrong. A lot of people have read them. I realized I'd have a 1099 that I'd have to deal with, and then my wife would know I wrote them because I wrote them without her knowing about it. I spent 3 years writing these books and sort of didn't tell her because I knew she would be opposed to my crazy prepping wacky ideas. So that wasn't a good move on my part, but it is what it is.
Yeah, some of the best art, comedy, lots of things, music, comes from real life. It comes from the pains that we're experiencing, and writing, drawing, those kinds of things. I mean, I think, as a kid, I grew up in New York City in the crack 80s. That kept me from becoming a crackhead or becoming a drug dealer, just doing something really destructive to my life. Just being able to express myself, it's a good way to work out the problems you have.
Absolutely, yeah. Writing these books was very therapeutic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny, when you guys went, I think Steve brought up a good question, there's I know my dad used to tell me this, that if you try to save someone who's drowning, you could also wind up drowning.
Yeah, you got to save yourself first. The whole gas mask, air mask in the plane, oxygen mask. Mask. That's the word. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's something that you really have to think about. When you love your wife, your kids, at what point do you go? I mean, do you force them to do something for their own good? Do you even in the end what happens there, right? We really seriously could be making those kinds of decisions, and I think in the last 2 years, some people have made those decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I say, you gotta, and that's a great analogy, by the way, about the drowning and the oxygen masks on the airplanes. I'm going to use those, by the way. I'm gonna very shamelessly steal those from.
Oh, that's fine.
They're so apt.
My logo down here in the corner, just
yeah, that's just right. Little attribution.
Yeah, if there's a handsome, black guy with a mohawk in your next book, I'm gonna be happy. I got no complaints.
I mean,
yeah,
I mean, I got a 6-foot Korean gunfighter who sells insurance. Why not have a handsome black man with a mohawk? Why not?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
right.
People, but
worse things have happened.
Yeah, a lot of people that are in what I would call, it's a weird use of the term, mixed marriages, but preppers and non-preppers are going to be facing this. I think that in a lot of cases, not all, but in a lot of cases, the problem will resolve itself because events on the ground will be so obvious. It'll be so obvious that you can't stay behind in the suburbs that are on fire that it won't be a hard sell. Now, that's still not okay in the sense that if you've got a prepper and a non-prepper in a marriage, the prepper, in my case, prepping secretly, spending money secretly, having to worry about getting caught. I talk in the book about bringing things through customs, is what I called it, when I would unload stuff from the garage and bring it into the house, bringing it through customs. And so you put a lot of stress on the prepping spouse, and it's not fair to the prepping spouse. But all that gets washed away if, in a crisis, the non-prepping spouse says, okay, I'm on board. What are we going to do? What do we need to do? And then everything's cool. Yeah. I mean, bygones are bygones because you're going to survive this with your family intact.
You don't save money for retirement at 65.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Have you seen any parallels, with what happened with COVID? I think the stats were saying, especially in the beginning, there were lots of divorces when people had to stay home and live with each other.
Wow. Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah.
Child abuse went up, divorces went up,
Substance abuse, suicides, all kinds of stuff went up. Yeah, I have heard that. As far as the effect of COVID on the prepper, non-prepper spouse thing, one of the guys on the team, and I won't say which, he's actually not in the books because he joined the team after the books were written. But his wife was not at all into what he was doing. She kind of tolerated it, sort of rolled her eyes, which isn't really tolerating it. It's allowing it to happen, which is a different thing. But anyway, after COVID, after she went, and it sounds cliche, but it's true. After she went to the store and there was no toilet paper, that honestly, the lack of toilet paper is what did it for her. I remember he called me from the parking lot of a Costco and he said she just went in and there was no toilet paper, and she just said to me, what do we need to do to make sure we're taken care of? And then so that COVID thing opened the eyes of quite a few people for the better, which is good. Hey, we'll take all comers. There's no elitism in prepping. Well, I mean, 299 days and then our podcast, Prepping 2.0. So that's the ongoing thing, the podcast. So when I say there's no elitism in the podcast, I mean kind of ongoing. We don't turn our nose down at people that just figured it out with COVID, because the more the merrier. The more people that are prepared, the more people that are going to live, and they're going to live in relative comfort, and they're not going to need help from me, and they're not going to be stealing my stuff. Yeah, they're not going to be stealing my stuff if they're taken care of. So there's no downside to what we do in 299 days and Prepping 2.0 podcast about getting people fired up to prep and getting them prepared in whatever level it is they can. Because everybody has different financial, resources, different family situations. Geography is a factor. You mentioned New York City. I know you don't live there anymore, thank goodness.
Oh,
right?
hell no.
Oh, yeah.
Most of my family still does, but I had to make that choice to walk away from that.
Yeah, and it wasn't easy, was it?
No.
Yeah.
The thing, look, people, when it comes to spouses, I mean, I think we're all married, right? I mean,
Second time.
Yeah, okay.
At least once for some of us, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
twice, maybe
Yeah.
more.
You know, I mean, it's nothing new, right? It's always difficult to get your spouse to listen to you, whether it's a husband trying to get the wife or wife trying to get the husband. People ask me that in the gun world, you know. How do you get your wife to do stuff with you? And like, I know in my case, my wife does do stuff with me, some things, you know, and I think that I always tell people you can't force that. That's not a thing that you could force. People have to make decisions. I remember when I went and got my CCW, my wife didn't want to do it. So I went off on my own and did it. And when I came back, I was talking to friends that one of my friends, she was actually in the Marines, and we were just excited talking about gun stuff. And she didn't even have to go do the course. And she was like, you know what? I'm going to go take that course. And then my wife heard us talking about how much fun it was. And she was like, okay, well, I'm going to take the course too. And I was like, okay, I'll go with you guys. You know, and I took it again. So sometimes you just have to leave these things open and let someone find their own interest, because if you force them into it, then they're going to resist it.
Yeah, it never works, and it doesn't work on anybody, especially the personality of my first wife. Very strong and independent. I mean that in a complimentary sense.
Mm-hmm.
And there's absolutely no way she was going to do something she didn't want to do, and it just wasn't going to happen. Why force it?
Yeah, and if you ask Lola is probably in the chat somewhere right now saying, Hank Strange does not listen to anything I tell him to do either. Right? So,
Yep.
yeah,
right.
it goes, yeah, and it would be absolutely 100% true. You know, but you have to run it. Sometimes I think that there's warning signs in life that people refuse to pay attention to. You know, it's almost like you're running down the highway and there's a sign like, hey, this road is closed, and then you see another one like, I'm serious, the road's closed, and there's another one like, no, the road's closed, you're gonna die if you keep going down this way. And people just choose to ignore those things. And I hope that with what we've been going through, that a lot of people in America are paying attention to that and realizing there doesn't have to be some massive apocalypse. You could very easily wind up in a bad situation with something, and it doesn't even for sure it kills people, but no more than the people that normally die, but it still massively affects your life, and your life is never the same after that.
Yeah, I think there are two phases to this issue of people believing that preparation is a good idea, and that's pre-COVID and post-COVID. There was something about those empty store shelves that made people realize that this can happen. I think a lot of people just skipped along in life and figured, oh, I live in America, nothing bad ever happens in America. You know, they didn't grow up in New York City in some of the conditions you did, and if they did, they would know that bad things happen in America, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
But they just thought that this is la la land with unicorns and sprinkles and fairy dust, and then they saw, again, it was a very small thing, but toilet paper is kind of important. That it's possible for things to be not on the shelves in America. And now, post-COVID, the conversation is a lot different when it comes to convincing people they need to prepare. It takes a lot less convincing. It's more just tagging on to the COVID shortages and saying, well, you know, gas prices could maybe go up. Oh, geez, you know, that happened. We've had a guest on Prepping 2.0. He's our most popular guest. He's a food industry executive, and he goes by a fake name because he can't get outed, because in his corporate world he's dead meat if he's on a podcast called Prepping 2.0. And he would predict all these things, and not only predict them, which is helpful, but what he would do is explain why. He would explain why, for example, that ketchup wasn't going to be on the shelves, not because there weren't enough tomatoes, but because the plastic ketchup squeeze bottles were made by one manufacturer in the world, and they were shut down for COVID, and they had a bunch of supply chain issues themselves. And so ketchup could not be put into ketchup squeeze bottles, and you can't just put it in number 10 tins or 5-gallon, you know, squirt bladders or whatever they are.
Because nobody knows how to use that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it really sunk in more when you heard the explanation why. But that's I'm getting a little far afield, but it's a different conversation nowadays.
Yeah.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, so you brought up the toilet paper thing, and it seems like nobody thought of, like, there are other solutions besides toilet paper.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
How do people in other parts of the world do
We
it,
had
right?
this,
'Cause
yeah. We had this
everybody cracks.
conversation on my show. Yeah, we had this conversation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and also even before this whole thing, we've had the conversation before, and even if you Google it, you'll see that people say, "What's the number one thing that you need to have if everything goes crazy?" Most people are going to say toilet paper because they are not. They don't know how to use leaves, or the garden hose, or tear up some T-shirts or whatever it is, right? As crazy as
Exactly.
that sounds, we are conditioned for this. I mean, in Katrina, people left their dogs behind, and their dogs starved to death, even though there was a lot of food, because they didn't know how to eat if someone didn't serve them. So,
Exactly right. Very good analogy.
yeah.
I'm getting a lot of good analogies from you.
Right,
I'm
that's what.
shamelessly using that one too.
That's why we call this podcast "Who Moved My Freedom." It's from the book "Who Moved My Cheese." I don't know if you guys have heard of that book.
I have.
Yeah, it's a good book to read. Very short book. I think I don't know. I could read it in 30 minutes. But basically, he's talking about that. What happens if someone moves? If you're a rat in the maze and someone moves the cheese and you show up where you expect it to be and it's not there? What do you do?
Yeah.
So that's where we're coming from. Steve, I sense you have another question here.
I have all kinds of questions. Yeah, we're talking
Go for
about prepping in the chat, and Lola actually brought up a good question. What is the simplest step that someone can take towards preparing? And my answer for that is, like, you don't have to go crazy. I mean, like, we have this big definition of what prepping is from all the TV shows and all the people that are really better at it than we are, because they've got more experience, more practice, more time in the hole. But what I do is I don't buy one thing. I buy two. So if I'm going in to get a shampoo refill, I get two, and now I've got the one that's in the bathroom, and I've got the one that's on the store shelf.
Lola's laughing right
in the
now.
basement.
I'll tell you why in a minute. Go ahead.
And then when the one in the bathroom runs out and I pull the one off the shelf from my store and put it in the bathroom, then it goes on the store list and it's no longer an emergency. And I've now, like, you do that with everything over a gradual amount of time, and then after a while you're not going grocery shopping anymore. I mean, when the shutdowns happened here, it didn't matter. Not a thing, not a problem at all. We didn't have the right amount of toilet paper stores, but we had a backup plan. We were fine. We had plenty of food here, no problems there. We actually raise a lot of our own food, and there was no issues there. And we just kind of rode it out. We didn't have a whole lot of debts to worry about, so it didn't matter if I kept my job or not. I was fortunate enough to be able to keep my job, but like, just getting to the point of being debt free, it doesn't have to happen overnight. You don't have to have an entire warehouse full of supplies. You don't have to have, all of your debts paid off tomorrow morning when you wake up. But just have that mindset and start going in that direction, and you'd be surprised how quick you get there.
Yeah, I think that's a good answer. Lola's probably laughing because the things that I like when I go into the store with her, which sometimes I'm not allowed for this reason, I buy two.
Yep.
If I like that thing and I know I need it, in my brain I think, you know what, it could be apocalypse and I can't get any more brown sugar. I'm getting two containers of the brown sugar. So yeah, for sure, that's a way to think about it. It's an overabundance mentality. Some people have like an underabundance mentality, and so they don't think about these things. But I think also when it comes to, like, with your example of buying food and things like that, a lot of people only they only think about an apocalypse when it's going to happen. Living in Florida, if a hurricane gets announced, even if it's not, and hurricanes move slow, so we know where it's going to go. People not even in the path will go buy everything in the store. They'll go to a Home Depot and just buy everything in Home Depot that has nothing to do with it, instead of preparing. And I always try to tell people, prepare for the personal apocalypse that could happen to you, like you lose your job, or you get really badly hurt and now you can't work, or you're missing a source of income from someone in the family. So be prepared for those little things that could happen to just you alone and not everyone else. So, Glenn, what's your answer to this?
Well, I think the most important thing to do prepping wise, first of all, is be right with God. I know this isn't a religious show, so I'm not going to go on about that, but that's
no,
the
you're
answer.
good.
But then,
yeah, you're good. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a good one.
Yeah. But the second thing is exactly what was mentioned, a twist on that, and that is understanding that stuff could go wrong. There could be disruptions in supplies. There could be a reason why you can't just go out and get more shampoo or brown sugar, for example. Once you accept, and this is why the shelves being empty during COVID were so important. Once you accept that there could be a problem, then you're much more open to solutions to a problem. Nobody's going to come up with solutions to things that aren't problems. I'm not going to come up with solutions to how to prevent unicorns from running through the streets and crashing into cars, because there are no unicorns. I hate to break it to you guys, but there are none. And but
Steve is worried.
So, yeah, it's understanding there's a problem, and it's a mindset thing. 90% of success in prepping is mindset, and only a few percentage points are having the time and the money to buy stuff and learn skills. It's all mindset, because and I've never been in the military. I have a bunch of friends in the special operations community. It's a long story, but it's not that interesting. I don't mean to imply that I'm cool, because I'm not. But all my special operations friends tell me it's all about mindset. It's not just how far you can run or how long it takes you with a pack on your back to go some 20-mile course or whatever it is. It's all about mindset. And they say, let me get this phrase correctly. First is mindset, second is skill set, and third is tool set. So stuff is third, and mindset is first, and skills are second. And that's one of the reasons preparedness is so doable. You don't need $1 million to do this. YouTube is free. You can learn about solar generators. You can learn about, guns. You can learn about all kinds of stuff for free. And then there's ironically, I think the most important prepping topic is actually the cheapest one, and that's water. Having water purification tablets, they're dirt cheap. You can't really survive on them too long because they kind of mess up your stomach a little bit. So having a good filtration system, it's the most important and the cheapest thing. And when else does that intersect, right? Most important and cheapest. It's pretty rare. So it's 100% doable. And that's one of the things we talk about on Prepping 2.0. This is doable. And every week we motivate people and let them know what they can do to prepare. Because, if your solution is, just go spend $1 million on a bunker, that's not a solution. I mean, that's crazy talk.
Yeah.
You won't have any idea how to actually use it either.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing. Knowing how to use stuff and practicing with your stuff. And that's another reason to grow into it, to learn a few skills and experiment and do some things and get your feet wet and actually experience it. Gardening is a classic example of that. There are a lot of people that think that they've, just because they've got some seeds, they're going to throw them into the ground and everything's going to turn out okay. Anyone who's ever gardened, and especially if you homestead, right? You know that's just simply not the case. And so you've got time now. That's the cool thing about what I call peacetime, which is what we're in. And I think we're in the collapse. It's begun. And there are tangible signs of it that I don't need to elaborate on, because everybody knows. That's why they're watching and listening to a show like this, because they know that. But
slow burn,
but in peacetime, you have time, and you should be very thankful that you have time. You have time to learn things, practice things, do things, and stretch outside of your comfort zone. And you mentioned ham radio, so here we go on that topic. I wasn't particularly interested in ham radio, but I realized how important it was. I've since become interested in it, but I'm not like crazy super into it by any means. But that was an example of something I didn't know anything about, and I had to stretch myself, get outside my comfort zone, and learn something new, because it was so undeniably important to know how to do. And that's one of the things that separates, I think, successful preppers from hobbyists and people who talk big, right? They sit on the couch and they don't do stuff, or I call it the buy it now, right? The Amazon buy it now preppers. They see something like seeds, they swipe that thing, they buy it now, and then they think that their checkbox has been checked, or their box has been checked, and they've got nothing to worry about. But it's a better way to live when you challenge yourself, when you try new things, when you learn new things. You're a more complete person. and it's a better way to live. And anyway, I'm motivating myself here.
No, you're good. You're good. I was just looking at the chat to see if there were questions. You know, I think you're right. I think we do need to stretch ourselves a little bit outside of the comfort zone. Sometimes you don't have to know everything about something. You just need to be aware of it. And, you know, I would say to folks that you also don't need to have or know everything. You know, if you know your neighbors or the people around you, a lot of that could help. And if you, for example, specialize in something, then that gives you an ability to barter. So when everyone like I've been doing the gun thing here since 2013, and you know what they say, like, you know, buy low, sell high, or trade when things are happening. And some of that happened during this time. If I had friends that they were, you know, they didn't get enough ammo or something like that, okay, you know, what you got? There's always some bartering that you could do with things. So
that's one of the things I learned really early in life, is that everybody is useful. And I don't mean that like a derogatory way, like people are too stupid and therefore they're useful. I mean, like, everybody has a skill, and a lot of people have skills that I don't have, and I have skills that a lot of other people don't have. And there's a happy marriage there. Like you were saying, like, somebody didn't have the proper amount of ammo and can't go hunting. Well, I have the proper amount of ammo and the hunting skills. What do you have in trade? And that's really, I don't think there's anything as being off grid technically. Like, you need to have that grid, even if it's not like the electric grid or something along those lines. You need to have that grid of friends that you can rely on and count on in your own personal network, because you can't survive on your own.
Yeah, that's a good point. And a lot of us, the internet has led a lot of people to be that way, unfortunately. You know, that we're less connected to people, even though it seems like we are more connected in some ways. But I guess the guys that you're playing video games with online can't necessarily save you.
They're too far away.
Yeah, sometimes they can save you. I mean, you know, if you're having a heart attack, they might be able to call 911 for you, you know, for sure. But they can't always, you know, save you. You really do have to think about your neighbors and what are they up to and what things can they offer. And I think even your location has a lot to do with that, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Glenn, did you want to, you know, did you have some other things here that you wanted to add to that?
I wanted to amplify the point that everybody is useful, and I won't give away storyline spoilers, but there's actually a chapter that talks about this. It's based on a song by Lucinda Williams. A lot of storylines and settings and things come from music for me, because I mean, I Miss America came from Merle Haggard, so what does that tell you?
Right.
You know, but it's illustrated in the 299 Days books, and instead of like a white paper that says everyone has skills for the following 8 bullet pointed reasons, when you see the story and you relate to people and you see the examples and the story unfolds, and people that you didn't think would be very useful end up being useful. And it's not, you know, comic book cheesy, like, you know, the loser kid ends up being like the one who saves the day. I mean, there's no comic book cheesiness to 299 Days. Again, it's very real and practical. But we did a segment, or an episode, I should say, of Prepping 2.0 that talked about the different jobs or roles at a bug out location, and we came up with 15 of them, and we described what each role was and what it entailed and why it was important and who might be good at doing it. And when you hear that, you conclude that you probably ideally would need about 15 people, right? And so this, you guys are so right. This idea of the lone wolves that are gonna just go off into a national forest with a sharp knife and some duct tape.
Go
like
Rambo.
Yeah, from The Office, that famous episode where he's, you know, he goes out in the woods, and it's funny. But the community is absolutely critical. One of the reasons we named Prepping 2.0 was because it's that next level of preparedness, and we think that the number one thing in the next level is community, recognizing the importance of it, being part of it, giving to the community, and also understanding what you can get out of the community, and going about community the right way, the safe way. I mean, putting a thing on Craigslist saying looking for prepping community, come to my well-stocked house and come
Oh
check
yeah.
it out. That would be a bad idea. But
Right.
community is critical, and my model for that, again, there's nothing creative about what I come up with. I just look at human beings throughout the world at different times in history. They're all pretty much the same, and community exists for a reason. There's no history of a nation of lone wolves. Now, I'm not talking about being independent, because that's obviously important. We need to be self-reliant and all of that. I'm not, you know uh, a communist. I don't believe in the hive mentality, obviously, but community makes sense. You need people who know how to fix your water well, and in return, you provide them some security. And it doesn't have to be formal. It's just getting along. And I grew up in a very rural area. I now live in a very rural area in a small town in Montana. And every single day, we live the ideal that everybody just helps everybody, and you get along, and you're not greedy, because that doesn't last very long. I mean,
Nope.
Yep.
people
Yeah.
people don't appreciate it, and then they don't share with you, and so it's second nature to a lot of people. I think it's a lot easier if you're in a rural area, to live like this and to view community as positively as we all do. It's harder in a suburb, and it's really hard in an urban area,
Mm-hmm.
because there isn't a lot of community. I know there are neighborhoods and there are people that get along and everything. I'm not saying that there is no community. It's just not, the kind of community, like, if you need to borrow my snowplow, it's okay, because the city plows the streets.
That's
in
not
New York,
okay.
Yeah. How are you doing on time, Steve? I know we're going a little
Oh,
bit
I'm doing
over
good.
here.
I'm doing
Okay.
good.
Okay. Everyone. How about you, Glenn? Are you?
I'm at your disposal. I owe
Okay.
you one, so I mean,
Yeah.
I have all the time in the world.
Yeah. I think we can go. I think we can go a little bit longer here. And stretch it out a little bit. You know what I remember? So I was born in Guyana in South America, which is like considered the Caribbean, and my mom was a very resourceful person. And when we first came to live in America, we didn't have a lot, and you know, like there used to be these lines. I don't know if they still do it this way. I think they've modernized it, but they would have like where you could go, and for welfare they would just give out like cheese or bread, things like that, milk and stuff like that. And so we weren't on welfare or anything like that, but my mom would go there, and a lot of people around us, which you come to America from the Caribbean, you typically wind up living in a Caribbean neighborhood, just like if you came from Italy, you live in an Italian neighborhood, etc. So my mom would go and collect, like, the government cheese, and collect that more than what she needed, and bring it back for other people who were too proud to go there and collect that stuff. And I kind of learned from, like, that's a way to make yourself resourceful or helpful to people, by doing something that other people don't want to do. And then not everyone's going to appreciate that, obviously, but I think that this is a kind of, like, we're missing that a lot in this world. I don't believe in super specializing, but at the end of the day, there are people who have things that they could do that other people don't want to do, and that becomes something valuable that under those circumstances you could share with other people. If you're the person who learned how to sew, or learned how to plant things, or do things that other folks do not want to do, that's going to come in handy when things get bad, and you can use that to create a community around yourself.
Yeah, and we don't have to worry about that now in peacetime, with everything humming along and everything being groovy. You don't need to know what skills you have, and you don't need to rely on other people, because there's an app for that, right? I mean, and when things break down, people are going to find that they do need other people, and they're going to find that other people need them. I mean, everything is a two-way street, and it's going to be eye-opening. There was a fascinating study after World War II. It was about Britain and the Battle of Britain, and people forget how London was completely bombed out. I mean, it was horrible. It was like Ukraine. I mean, it was terrible conditions. And they assumed, going into World War II, when they saw the Battle of Britain was unfolding and the bombing was going on, they assumed that a lot of people that were on the margins of society that didn't fit in, they were quote losers or whatever, that they would have a lot of depression problems and everything. And some did, but a whole lot of people that didn't fit in to modern peacetime society ended up being the fire wardens. They ended up being the rescue people, the air watch people. They ended up doing all kinds of volunteer stuff, and they found their niche when society changed and different things were valued now. Being brave and caring and compassionate, being a nurse, for example, and being compassionate and decent never was terribly valued, but it was when there were a whole lot of blown up people that were injured. And so they were stunned to find that so many so-called losers found their place. That's another thing that happens in 299 days that you're going to be treated to, that you're going to be finding out all kinds of people that found their place in this radically changed world. And I think we're going to see a lot of that. So it's not all negative. By all means, I don't want this collapse to keep going, and I don't want there to be horrible conditions. Nobody does. No sane person does. And by the way, my military friends that have been in combat, they'll be the first to tell you that, glamorizing a civil war is a absolutely idiotic thing. I mean, so nobody should want it. And the people that have been through other countries' civil wars will tell you how awful it is.
Yeah, absolutely. I know there's people who think that there's going to be some kind of great reset, and then maybe your debts go away and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't matter. That's like thinking if you move from one state to another, that's going to change your personal problems that you have. That just changes your location, So if
you got to fix your head.
yeah. You definitely have to, you definitely have to learn how to fix yourself. So that if you could fix yourself right now, I think ultimately, like no society, no civilization really makes it forever. We've got some old civilizations that are around, but there's always these like dips, and there's always ebbs and flows in civilization. And America's had a pretty good long run, and it could get better also. I came here in the 80s, man. It was pretty terrible. I don't know if people really remember the 80s.
The early 80s in particular. I mean, they keep talking about 40% high inflation now. Well, 40 years ago was 1982. And I remember, my mom, I grew up poor. My mom was so thrilled to get a mortgage rate at only 9.25%, because she said, even if we're on welfare, we can pay it back. And that was the early 80s.
Yeah. I came here in 83, man, and lived in New York City, and it was not fun times. And New York is going to see that again, unfortunately. Lots of cities are going to see that again. But it's almost like a thing that has to happen. You don't want it to happen, though, but it has to happen. Things need to sometimes break down in order for people to realize that they have to work on making things better. So...
Yeah, they have to have a reason to do something new, which would be work in your example. And I think that there's a lot more work that needs to be done by a lot more people. I find work very satisfying, and if I'm not working, it's a little weird to me. I feel like I should be. Now, that doesn't mean I don't rest and all that other stuff, but I look around, and see a lot of problems that could be solved if people worked more. But that's preaching to the choir.
Let me ask you, both of you go ahead, Steve. Sorry.
I was gonna say my wife hates it when I start trying to fix things that are totally beyond. I've got a Chevy truck, and when I drive forward at 40 miles an hour, it tells me your backup lights are infunctional right now because you're towing a trailer. It's like, I don't need to know this information right now. I don't care.
Yeah, that's that. So, and you're trying to fix that, and she's trying to tell you what, like, leave it alone.
Leave it alone. Matter. Don't worry about that. Why do you stress out about this stuff? Why does it make you so angry? I'm like, I'm not angry, but I mean, come on. Don't you use your own product, people?
Yeah.
Scary, the stuff that makes it out to production.
Yeah. Let me ask you two guys this. What are the big warning signs for you that things, or what are you looking out for to say that things are really going to turn? Do you have those? People always asking me, there's a lot of different things that I do, and people always ask me, when's this bubble going to bust, When's that bubble going to bust? When do you think we're really going to... What are your warning signs or signals that, oh, everything's really about to get crazy?
Go ahead.
Okay. I was like, no, Glenn, you first.
Yes.
I go first if you want.
Yeah.
I think that we're in this scenario where you guys mentioned slow burn earlier, and I think we're already in that slow burn scenario. There's a lot of warning signs out there that things are going in the wrong direction. There's this old saying that I'm probably going to butcher it because I'm doing it live. Strong men create good times create weak men create bad times create strong men. Did I get that right?
And something like that, yeah.
I think we're in that scenario where there's been a lot of really good times, and good is relative. I mean, there were times that you know, what we're in now is that things are so, I don't know, I guess the right word is soft. Things are so soft that we can start thinking about things that don't really matter as much instead of thinking about things that really do matter. And you can see the way the markets are going. There's a lot of return to precious metals, and there's a lot of interest in firearms and personal protection and stuff like that. And those are all tells. Like, people don't feel secure in the banking system. People don't feel secure in the police force in their areas. And I'm not saying anything bad about police officers. I'm just saying it's a situation that we're in where people start to take matters into their own hands. And those, it's a small group of people. But, when you start to see like the local laundromat's got a "We Buy Gold" sign in the window, there's some stuff going on.
Yeah. You can kind of, you're saying like when you see the zeitgeist of everyone out there starts, like, this becomes commonplace for everyone to think that, right? Yeah.
Yep. There's a lot of people that are stacking gold and silver now, but not as many people as there will be when times get even worse than they are.
The funny thing about that is how useful is the gold and silver going to be for you? And I'm not saying it's not going to be useful, but it really depends on exactly what's going on, right? Or whether or not that's tradable, whether or not that's actual currency.
It's not an immediate solution. Your gold and silver is a protection. It's a hedge against inflation currently. It's a protection for you for when the system changes. So the big corollary that people talk about is Weimar Republic. When the Reichsmark went bad, people would take a wheelbarrow full of cash down to the grocery store, dump the cash out in the front parking lot, take the wheelbarrow in, trade that for a loaf of bread, and go back out. Because the wheelbarrow had more value than all the cash that was in it. The gold is there when whatever happens after that, you can then take the gold and convert that back into your local currency. You do need like a short-term plan and a long-term plan. Your short-term plan is a bucket full of 22 LR for varmint hunting that you can trade for. Either you take that and you find squirrels to eat, or you take that and you trade that for a loaf of bread because all you have is squirrel meat and you're getting a little tired of it. So you need a short-term plan, food stores. You need a slightly longer-term plan of how to get more food stores, and then a slightly longer-term plan of what to do when the world comes back.
Good points. Glenn?
Boy, I'll start off with the observation, and it's what you guys have mentioned, that we're in a slow burn, and I don't think people should be looking for that one big event. The internet gets hacked, or the electrical grid goes down, or there's an EMP. All those things are possible, and all those things would create a full-on collapse very quickly, and they could happen, and you should have a plan for those things. But don't just be looking for the big dramatic stuff. The more dramatic something is, the less likely it is to occur, and so factor that in. But things that I look at are supply chain disruptions, empty shelves in general, inflation. I've been screaming at the rooftops for years that inflation was coming, and now it is, and of course it's a lot worse than the 8.5% they came out with yesterday morning. It's probably closer to double that, but anyway, that's a detail. Another thing that I look for is the U.S. dollar not being the world reserve currency, because that means there will be
really close to that.
a lot less demand for U.S. dollars, which means the value of dollars would go down. We currently have Russia. It's true. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's not internet nonsense. The Russian ruble until June 29th, I think that's when that's the trial period when it ends. the Russian ruble is backed by gold, and that's a huge problem for the dollar. Um, I don't know if it's true. I don't know where it's at. I'm not a Saudi prince, but apparently Saudi Arabia is going to sell oil in other currencies, Chinese currencies. All this takes away from the demand for the US dollar, which is artificially high because it's the way that you buy and sell things globally for the most part.
Right.
And so once that happens, and it's going to happen quickly, it's going to be a series of, I think, orchestrated events, orchestrated in the sense that there are people, that decide when they're going to crash the dollar. They get out of the dollar first, and then they crash the dollar. And then all of a sudden, we're not talking about 8.5% inflation rates, you know, uh, per year. We're talking 8.5%, per month or something like that. And then you get hyperinflation. And the system we have cannot possibly survive with hyperinflation. Obviously, nobody is going to get 8.5% pay raises every month. So they're
Mhm.
going to have a lot less purchasing power. We're getting a taste of it now. It's going to get worse as even more of that federal spending stuff works its way through the system. That's the thing. It takes months or really years for inflation to take off once the money has been artificially created. And a lot of it, it started in the Trump administration. Trump administration was spending too much money and was borrowing too much money. Biden has just absolutely, multiplied that several fold. So
Mhm.
I'm not saying both sides are equal in this, but I mean it
Mhm.
did start with Trump, and we're seeing some of the Trump inflation. Yes, I said that
Mhm.
right now, but we're really going to see the Biden inflation probably when Trump is back in office in 2024. Then
Mhm.
he'll get blamed for it. But this isn't a political. But so uh,
Yeah.
disruption. I think
Mhm.
that crime is something, and you mentioned people buying guns. When people don't feel safe, I think another thing to look for is the rise in private security. um, when people, and it's not just some RoboCop movie that I've watched too many times and I think it's real life. I think RoboCop in a lot of ways is going to be real life. There's going to be tons of private security because the police can't or won't or aren't allowed to, or some combination thereof,
Mhm.
are not going to be able to control crime. Crime's going to go through the roof, and you're going to have private security contractors. That you have that in a lot of places in the world. I know Guyana and Panama are two different places in different parts of
Mhm.
Central and South America, but
Mhm.
I know that in Panama, people would have armed compounds, villas, and they would have security guards if they had any money. You're going to see a lot of that.
Mhm.
I think you're going to see um, what we call on Prepping 2.0 the cartelification of America. And that doesn't mean, Mexican drug cartels. And I'm not saying it's a perfect analogy, but the idea that the government has less and less real control over various areas. And that's true of Mexico. And the
Mhm.
government is corrupt. That's really true of Mexico. And you have non-governmental entities, often bad guys. And I'm not saying there are Mother Teresa cartels or anything like that, right? And you
Mhm.
have groups come in and provide basic governmental services when the government can't or won't. They usually extract a high price for that, like absolute loyalty, and it ends up turning out horrifically, like in Mexico. But when you look at a political and economic system, um, like Mexico with the cartels and the role that cartels play in the political and the economic system, I think it's undeniable that America's future is going to look a lot more cartelly. A word I just made up. I like to make up one word every single show.
Okay.
It's going to look a little more cartelly than most people would believe, and that comes on slowly, so it's hard to see. But when you start perceiving that that's going on, that should let you know that we're in an entirely different era, and there's no going back. There's no waving of magic wands. Societies don't do that. They don't go from uh, brutal systems to nice ones. Now sometimes the brutal guys get killed off, but that's pretty rare. America, in the 1700s was a rarity. It was absolutely unheard of for liberty to actually be enforced, and so that's another reason that civil wars and revolutions are not great things, because they rarely turn out well. So those are some things to look for. Just keep looking at the headlines and have an open mind, and know that there are reasonable things you can do to prepare to make yourself way better off for what's undeniably coming.
Yeah, I think there's several things, as you were speaking there, that I was thinking, hey, we're already seeing lots of signs of those things. You mentioned RoboCop. I know it's just happening. What is it, in Shanghai or something, that they have robot dogs out there telling people to stay off the streets. Don't believe that we're far away from that either. Here, you were talking about the currency. I think recently Biden, asked certain members of government, certain government organizations to look into a crypto to replace the dollar.
Digital dollar, yeah, that's for real. It's not a myth. It's not an internet, wives' tale.
No, it's not a thing. Yeah,
real.
That's out there. You guys can look it up. So I think there are a lot of those warning signs that you could see. You mentioned, private security. Yeah, there's people already doing that in lots of different places. That they're because either the police is getting canceled or defunded, and then people don't feel safe, that they're getting private security. And I've also noticed a lot of there's people in America, especially if let's put it not necessarily in the wealthiest Americans, but people who we would consider to have wealth. There's lots of those people just straight up leaving America and going somewhere else, if that makes any kind of sense to you. But I'm seeing that.
Didn't that happen in a book somewhere?
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know, like a book.
Yeah, America's the place that you go to. I've lived in quite a few places, including I lived in Nigeria before we lived here in America. When you see people leaving America to go live, like, let's say in Mexico, for example, or other third world countries. I have a friend who is living in Nicaragua. Okay, I mean, I'm with it. I was born and I've lived outside of America. It's not a good sign.
Nope.
It's not a good sign. And it's, I'm not knocking anyone who's done it, by the way. I'm not trying to knock you. I feel like you could do whatever you want to. But it's interesting. Think about it. What's happening. People are trying to get in here, and then the people here people who don't have anything in their countries because they're terrible are coming here, are risking everything to come here, and then people who have stuff that are here are leaving here and going to those places. What?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a friend who was born in Africa, moved to France, moved to the U.S., and now he's moving back to Africa because Africa is better for him.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. The day when you see me decide to go back and live in Nigeria, that's your big warning sign that you've been looking for.
Here's your sign. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's, I don't know. I think, I think, you're right. You guys are right. There's a lot of stuff that's already happening, and it doesn't mean it's the end of the world. Doesn't mean it will be the end of the world, Who knows how many times the world has ended? It's probably ended a lot of times.
Well, you bring up a good point, and the phrase is always the end of the world as we know it.
Mm-hmm.
And the key part of that is as we know it. The end of America, the American way of life, would be like just another Wednesday evening in a lot of places in the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the end of the world. It's only as we know it, and we have it pretty good. I'm not saying we don't, but it's going to constantly change. Maybe there's been a lot of change in my lifetime. I was born in the late 60s. I'm in my mid 50s now, and so maybe it's just my perspective. Maybe every generation or every person thinks that a lot has happened in their lifetime, but I think there's been a ton of change. One of the things I do, and I do it rarely because it bums me out, so I shouldn't do it very often, and that is I'll go on YouTube and I'll watch TV commercials from the 1980s. And man, has the world changed.
Yeah, I want to be a Toys R Us kid.
Yeah, exactly. There are all these ads and people.
Yeah. Where's the beef?
And there's no.
Yeah, where's the unbeliever meat? That's what it would be today. Can you believe that people are actually eating unbeliever meat? Hey, I don't believe it. Yeah.
So society is always changing, and there'll be big events and things, like if you know anybody who's, gone through alcoholism or something, they have to hit rock bottom. Societies are the same way. They have to hit rock bottom before they even realize they need to get their stuff together. And
Yep.
I think that's happening in America. We're on an obvious decline, and I don't know what rock bottom looks like. I hope it's as nice as possible, whatever rock bottom is. But that's what happens to societies, and we're no different. Just because we live in America doesn't mean we're unique. I mean, we are unique in a lot of ways, but we're not 100% unique.
We're not immune. We're also not immune from anything that could happen anywhere in the world.
Exactly.
Yeah. So listen, let me do this because I know it is getting late, and we should probably wrap this up. Hopefully we'll have you come back on here.
Yes, I would love it.
Absolutely. You're absolutely invited. This is also Steve of Temporarily Offline's first time on here. I hope you had a good time also, Steve.
Oh, definitely. First time, not last time.
Okay, sweet. So here's what I'm going to do here to wrap up the show. I'm going to start with Steve and let you guys tell the folks out there who are listening and watching this how they can communicate with you guys, support you. And then I'll actually run in the end, and we'll come back, and someone's going to leave us with the words of wisdom. That's traditionally how we do it here. So I'll start with Steve. For the folks out there, how can they communicate, support you? Where should they go to get your stuff?
Yeah, I don't know if it came through, but I dropped a link in the chat to my YouTube channel. I do ham radio and technical stuff, and I try to, as Hank mentioned earlier, I try to keep it lighthearted and fun as opposed to grumpy old man, do it my way or else. I'm very encouraging, and I'd like to have people come along for the journey and help to, because I want the world to be a better place. I want to lift people up like I want to be lifted up. So that's what I do. I have a YouTube channel. It's called Temporarily Offline Ham Radio, and I do all things communication.
Awesome, thank you. And Glenn, same question for you, my friend.
Yeah, probably the central location for everything is the podcast website, which is prepping2-0.com, prepping2-0.com. You can subscribe on all your usual platforms, iTunes and all that other stuff. You can listen to us on the website. Then there's 299days.com, which is the book's website. And I have ham radio electronic flashcards that teach preppers everything they need to know about ham radio. It's all practical stuff. It's not technical stuff. And that's PAM radio, which stands for Prepper Amateur Radio.
Okay. Have you heard of that, Steve? That's cool.
No, but I'm looking it up now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
PAM-radio.com.
Okay.
It started off when I had to teach my team guys about ham radio, and I thought I'd write them out on index cards, and a friend of mine who's a millennial reminded me how old and stupid I was. Index cards.
What's an index card?
What is that? Yeah. And so why don't you do an app? So being the Dumbo that I am, I said, how hard could it be? So did an app, and people can learn all the practical stuff from that. My wife is a fellow prepper novelist, has a 3-book series out called A Great State, which is at agreatstate.com. But again, prepping2-0.com is the central location for all these little offshoot things that I'm talking about.
All right, very cool. And I believe that your podcast is on the Firearms Radio Network. Am I wrong or right?
It sure is.
Okay,
we're very, very happy to be here. Yeah,
right.
We
Absolutely.
love it.
We're both on the same network. We're both on the Firearms Radio Network. So shout out to everyone there. Everyone who's listening to my podcast should go check Prepping 2.0, right?
Yep.
Make sure you guys check that out. Of course, please go to Temporarily Offline and tell them that you heard about this from watching the show. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to run in the end. I'm going to come back. Which one of you gentlemen is going to leave us with words of wisdom?
Probably Steve, because he's more wise.
Good point. No, I think it's got to be you, Glenn. Steve nominated you. I nominate you.
I did it first. I was first.
Yes, yeah. So, that's what we'll do. Let me run in the end here. It's going to be real quick. Let me do that now. All right, guys, thanks so much for listening to us here. As I mentioned, we are on the Firearms Radio Network. We're going to rip out this audio, throw it up on iTunes, Podbean, Audible, all the places, well, I think we're on Spreaker also, all the places you get your audio podcast from. We really do appreciate everyone hanging out here with us. I don't think there's a show tomorrow night. We've got some, wait, what's today? Is today Wednesday or Thursday?
Wednesday.
Oh, there is
Wednesday.
A show tomorrow then. There actually is one tomorrow. Okay, so there won't be one Friday. Big thanks to Steve of Temporarily Offline, as well as Glen Tate, author and lawyer, for joining us here. You guys can look up the 299 Days series, as well as Prepping 2.0. Glen, words of wisdom, sir.
If you're a man, and most listeners of this show are, if you're a man, your job is to provide for your family. That's politically incorrect, but I don't give a shit. So the way to provide for your family in uncertain times like this is to prepare for uncertain times like this. Your job is to make sure your family's going to eat and be safe, and it's very doable. And get off your ass and do it. It's your job. Do your damn job.
Absolutely. Well said.
That was
All right.
passion there. I loved it.
Absolutely. I loved it. You guys stay right there. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Let me make sure I press all the appropriate buttons to end the show properly here. And let me see. Okay, hold on. Here we go.